Well, welcome everybody back to another Answering the WMSCOG live stream. This one's going to be exclusive. Usually I stream to both Great Light Studios and this channel, but I'm nearing 1,000 subscribers, which is a goal that I've had for a while. It'd be great to get up to 1,000. And so I'm trying to do more exclusive stuff over here to hopefully get the subscriber count up. But today I have Kelsey and Anthony. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with both of them, both former members of the World Mission Society Church of God. And were you both in, I always forget, I can't keep track, but Kelsey, I know you were in there for 10 years, right? And Anthony, how long was it for you?
Also a little over 10.
A little over 10. Okay, so 20 years of combined World Mission Society Church of God experience here. And so what we're going to be talking about today is something that's been going on for the past handful of months, probably the past, I think it started probably 6 months or more ago, where I woke up one morning, checked my email, and noticed I had an odd email notification from YouTube that said one of my videos had been reported for a copyright complaint. And basically turns out that the World Mission Society Church of God began to find any videos I had where I was using photos of Ahnsahnghong in the thumbnail or in the video. And usually I hardly ever will even use their photos. But there were a handful of videos where I had used a photo in the thumbnail, or I think one of the videos that originally was flagged, I pulled up an image of Ahnsahnghong for, maybe 5 seconds. So the WMS flagged the video, reported it to YouTube, and YouTube took the video down. And so since then, they've done this multiple other times, both on Great Light Studios and Answering the WMS, where, and this really just, this is, to me, this confirms, and I'm going to pass this off here in a minute to you guys and get your just kind of initial thoughts on this. But to me, it's just like, okay, yeah, there you go. Everything we're saying about them, this is just another way that they are confirming to us and to everybody listening that the things we say about them, their behaviors, their tactics, their characteristics, their inability to allow there to be any sort of public criticism, or one of the things that exists in the Steve Hassan's bite model is just cults don't allow questions, or they try to shut out anything that might counteract their dogma. And so this is just an example of that, where you have myself and other former members who are coming online and sharing criticism about the WMS, or whether that's doctrinal or just letting former members speak about their negative experiences. The WMS, I would say, in their insecurity, I think insecurity drives so much of this. Insecurity and narcissism, and the two kind of play together, but they can't stand that. They can't stand to have people out there that are pointing out their issues. I think and so I'm going to stop talking and just kind of get your guys' initial thoughts. But that's kind of the situation. Is that and real quick, it's not only my channel we've come to find, and we're going to show you. I got some information about other YouTube channels that are also speaking out, offering criticism online about the WMS. And these other channels, a whole handful of them, have had the same sort of thing going on, where the World Mission Society Church of God is flagging them for copyright strikes. They're finding anything in the videos that they could possibly grab onto, whether it's a photo being used or something like that. And so we're going to talk about that. We also would like to get into, depending on how much time we have, we would like to take questions. If you have questions in the live chat, there's a few questions I have pulled up that I kind of have set aside as I've seen them in the comments over the past few days that I think would be fun to try to answer or comment on. And so with that, yeah, I guess Kelsey and Anthony, what's kind of your initial take on this? Just your general thoughts about the WMS trying to, and I won't even put it, I won't even give this narrative, I guess. That's to say that they're doing this to shut me down or to silence me. That's sort of my bias, my perspective coming into it. But I guess from your guys' vantage point, what's your take on this? Why do you think they are doing this to channels like me and the many others that they're flagging for copyright issues?
I'll let you go first, Kels.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I think simply put, and I think the answer that everybody already knows is, like you said, that they're trying to shut you down. They want, they don't like criticism. They work very hard to drown out criticism. I mean, you can see that if you search World Mission Society Church of God, years ago, the examining site used to be right at the top. And then what do? They come out with all these, extra, like San Diego WMSCOG, San Francisco WMSCOG, to create more and more sites that are copy and paste of each other to drown out any critical stuff. And so what we see here, I mean, they're flagging you for which, if they're flagging you for images of Ahnsahnghong, it's kind of ridiculous because they don't own the rights to his image. That's
right.
why when you oftentimes go to like any of their sites, right, you'll see, like, if you even see an image of Ahnsahnghong, it's either like some artistic rendition of that image. It's either that one black and white photo that's a drawing. It's either like, or it's of him at the last Passover, right? That he celebrated in 1984, right? The Passover of 1984 and like one baptism photo are the only ones you see, which we'll get into like a little bit later. As to like, how do they have those images if they don't own his if they don't have the rights to his image? But it's so funny that they flag you because they're just trying to shut you down. That's what they're trying to do. They don't like anything critical of them. They don't want to lose members because more members mean more money coming into them. So that's my initial spiel.
Well,
what about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I see the same. I see the same. And, Kelsey brings up a good point about they have a lot of tactics because, one, they want to get rid of any criticism, and two, they try to inundate the internet with their own propaganda in order to silence critics by making it even harder to find, by making their teachings and their propaganda more prevalent. So what ends up happening is they created a bunch of websites to push down critical websites. They on YouTube, they put out like video after video after video, and then they try to trick the algorithm, I believe, with fake views. Like, you look through the comments and like it has nothing to do with the videos that they're releasing. It's just a lot of Korean thank father mother, amen, like just like one word, very short, like it could go anywhere. They're not really about what the video is about. And it seems like bots, because I think Jeremy spoke about it, where like they put out a lot of views and then all of a sudden it drops. The view count drops because once they figure out that it's bots that are viewing it. So they're finding all these different sneaky ways to only have their information out there and then also cut off. So this is just a sneaky way. They don't care if an image is used. The other way that they do it is lawsuits that they've done against different critics in the past. They've tried to shut it down that way. Even when they know it's frivolous, they just continue to like put out different lawsuits just in order to shut people up. So they're trying to silence critics, which is a big thing that many different cults have done. And, I'm just trying to also put on the viewpoint of what I would hear if I were sitting in one of the pews in the church right now about why they're doing it. Oh, this is, we're saving souls, we're protecting people. When you're a member, you really think that these shady things that they're doing in order to silence critics is a good thing. But, we have freedom of speech. We should be able to communicate and give an opposing position, but they don't want any opposing positions to exist. And that's the problem, is that if you have the truth, they should be able to stand up to criticism, but it doesn't. And that's why they're so scared. And that's why they work so hard and find these really snake ways to take down things that are critical of their teachings and of their methods and all that.
Yeah. It's hard for me to see how, there could be any motive other than just, fear, I guess would be one way to describe it. They're afraid of the information that is being provided in the videos on this channel or the other channels, the other YouTube channels that are being flagged as well. And I was talking with Anthony before we started about how, on Great Light Studios, I don't only speak out about the WMS. There's a branch of Christianity, Calvinism, that I'm pretty strongly opposed to. I've made a lot of videos about Calvinism and why I disagree with it. I criticize it, try to do so respectfully and lovingly, but I will use all the time, almost in every single video. And I've probably made 50 or more, I don't know, somewhere around their videos. And I will use video clips all the time of Calvinist pastors. I'll take clips from their sermons. I'll put them into my videos. I'll take images from their websites of the pastors to use them in my thumbnail images. I mean, I'm using their stuff all the time in my Calvinism videos. Guess how many times I've received a copyright strike from one of those pastors on my YouTube channel? Zero times. You know what else I have on Great Light Studios? Because I'm speaking out about Calvinism, I have Calvinists that will come and take my videos and they'll take my pictures and they'll go and make their own videos criticizing me and responding to things I've said and telling people all over YouTube why I'm wrong about what I'm saying about Calvinism. Again, taking my video clips, taking my pictures. Guess how many times I've filed a copyright strike against somebody who's made a criticism video about me? 0 times. Yeah, I don't do that. I don't care. Actually, it excites me. I like when I see people criticizing and responding to me because it's like, well, now we can engage and I can hear your thoughts and I can see maybe I should adjust in certain ways that I'm explaining my views, or maybe I can explain to them why they're still, I think, inaccurate and why my arguments still stand. And I enjoy that engagement because I'm convinced that what I think is true and right. And so I don't really care if people criticize it or have negative things to say about it, because I'm confident in what I believe. And so I guess I'm saying all that to say, I think there's a contrast between healthy, what a healthy religious organization or church or pastor, whatever, how they would respond to criticism versus how, groups like the World Mission Society Church of God respond to criticism. There's a reason that the Calvinist pastors who come across, I know many of them that I criticize, they see my videos. They see themselves in the thumbnails of my videos and they know I'm talking about them. And they might get irritated at it and say, and some of them don't necessarily like the criticism, but they're not going to go and file a copyright complaint on YouTube to try to get that video taken down, because they're aware that would just be childish. It's juvenile. It's like you're so afraid of what is being said about you that you can't handle just letting it stand there. That criticism exists. You have to do whatever you can not to address the criticism. Oh no, you're not going to go on YouTube and, oh, we lost Kelsey. There she is.
No,
not going to go on YouTube and address the critics. You're just going to try to shut their mouths.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with that, Jordan. It's even in the church, you can see that any criticism is shut down. If somebody has like a question or things like that, the leadership starts to treat them a little bit differently. I think Kelsey could probably has seen the same sort of thing in the culture of the church. Is like, if somebody has a question, like, if they're brand new, that's fine, and they're not around everybody else. Like, a brand new member is under the leadership of like one or two caretakers who will separate them, and but so they could have questions, and they're in an environment where they're not amongst all the members. But if somebody is bringing up a question, if somebody's starting to question the church teachings, they're going to start to like use the leadership to move them away and separate them and like treat them differently, and then make them feel negatively, so they don't want to ask questions anymore. Like it becomes like they get shunned within the church. And then when they feel uncomfortable in the church, then they don't want to ask questions anymore.
Yes.
So like even in the church, criticism is squashed.
Yeah, that exactly. This isn't just the outside critics. It's the quote unquote critics within the church who are faithful members who just have genuine questions or concerns. Both on both sides, the WMS can't handle it. They it's like a child who's not emotionally mature, stable enough to handle certain things. They can't handle it. They can't respond in a meaningful, rational, intelligent, helpful way. It's like they don't have that capacity within themselves to do that. And so they just have to try to shut it down. And so Michelle said, this is a major cult red flag, is that they don't tolerate criticism. The last thing they want is a video getting around and causing doubt amongst the congregation. They want obedient robot emojis. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What upsets me too about it is that the complaint that you received and you shared was like a mile-long list. And you're on there one time. So we had to go link by link by link by link. But the thing is, a lot of these are located in India. There's one, like another one who had 2 videos out. I think it was called A Christian Guy was his platform. He had 2 really good videos that were out. And, all of these things are getting flagged. So there's somebody, and the email came in Korean. So there's somebody in Korea going through and watching hours and hours and hours of video, just sitting there looking and waiting to see if they could find an image to pounce on. So,
and there was a name attached on the email. I don't know if that's something we want to talk about.
I don't know. I don't think we want to say the name, but okay. I mean, it says an actual name of a person.
Yeah,
who's going and doing this.
Yeah, the name and the email of So you're probably not good to pull that name up, but
yeah, they say that they're a representative of the church, and it came in to us in Korean. So it's definitely somebody who's assigned just to try to take down critical videos. Like, that's a job that was assigned to them. It's not like some vigilant member. It's somebody presenting themselves as a representative of the church. So
let me just just so kind of understand what Anthony's talking about. I'm going to just share this is the email I got. And for some reason, Google's it's like frozen. It's not translating it, but it came in Korean. And basically what you're seeing is a list of, I won't scroll down because I don't know where the names of the person who showed it's going to show up. But
I would leave it at the top.
Okay. And so, so this is just, it lists a handful of different channels that are being flagged by the WMS. And so, just like Anthony said, it just kind of points to how somebody's just sitting there that has been assigned, it seems like, to just go online and find any negative videos about us. And if you have any sort of grounds to flag them for copyrights to try to get those videos taken down, then do that. It's just kind of silly to me. By the way, with pulling up the name, is there like a legal concern we have with that? I mean, it's information that was given to us. So
My concern is like if doxing. You know how like when social media influencers, I mean up to you guys, but my concern is doxing. Like when social media influencers they call out someone else and people will go in and people will go and find out details about them and harass them and not say
Oh
that
yeah,
anybody
yeah,
here
yeah.
would do that. I just don't wanna
Yeah.
I don't wanna be liable for
No,
something like that.
no.
So
We have no personal vendetta or
yeah.
anything like that against the individual or individuals who did this. We're just trying to express, hey, like this is a little bit silly. This is a little bit childish. I think this kind of demonstrates so much of what we always say on this channel.
Yeah, get a new job. It's sad.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a little bit pathetic for lack of better. I mean, it's just come on. Like you really
it's so ironic because when you see the things that the WMS does, because there's like a bunch of videos, for example, that the WMS has created that they don't show to the public, right? And Anthony, you know what I'm talking about. Like when you saw like the UCC space videos, and they have
They'd be using
movies.
Terminator. Oh, they love that scene in Terminator where like the bomb goes off at the playground and she's like on the fence. Yeah, they love showing that clip. They show that clip all the time, even in the kids' room.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. And so, and it's just in the like the evidence book too. The evidence book, they actually got in trouble for their evidence book, which is like the book with all like the different sources and whatnot. They
Yeah,
didn't get
it's
permission
like
to do any of
excerpts
that.
from different books and news articles and like images created by different news sources, and so all the stuff that like there's a Catholic books and all these different Protestant books. They made a compilation of excerpts to kind of prove their point, but they never got any sort of like agreement with these places to be able to use it in a compilation. And then they sold it, they printed it, published it, sold it, got income from it. And then, then they got caught and then they had to stop. I mean, a lot of different things that they use. And I would say even Ahnsahnghong, like a lot of his doctrine, he copied. Like he didn't even create it. He did, like he took out his tracing paper and just followed along with, Seventh-day Adventist. Like his teaching about the Trinity is right from the Pentecostals. His teaching about, Melchizedek, King David, Suim, I believe, wrote about that in a book she published, right? Wasn't that before his books came out? Or like if he
book, before Green Book.
Before any of that, she wrote books and he copied her. So that's something that like not a lot of WMS COG members realized, is that she wrote other books too, not just the one. And he kept her in the church and then started to copy her teachings.
And it's like, it's not even, it's funny because it's not even just the teaching itself, it's the wording too. Because when you look at excerpts from the Green Book, and then which was written in 1980, and then excerpts from her book, which was written in 1978, there's almost full sentences that match. So it's not just like the idea, it's like almost full sentences, which that's a big copyright violation.
But she was a bigger person and didn't make any violation strikes against him.
So I want to talk about Acts 5 because I think that's a big, kind of connecting point in all of this. But before we do, there's a couple comments I think might be worth just addressing. So this person, I won't try to pronounce the name, but it seems like probably a member maybe. But they say, seems you people have no works, finding fault in others' faith.
It's not about
copyright here, man. Like, we're not even talking about their doctrine. We're talking about copyright. So,
yeah, right. And I would also point out that it's, I get this a lot. This sort of, again, this comment isn't perfectly clear, but it seems to be kind of saying like, stop complaining about other people's faith, do something else. And so I get this whether I'm addressing Calvinism on Great Light Studios or whether I'm addressing Shincheonji or anything. You're going to have people saying, hey, why are you wasting your time? Why are you spending so much time on this? Why are you just complaining about this group? Like, do something else. And, if you look at the New Testament epistles, especially the epistles of Paul, many of them are written, like the context of many of the epistles are written in the context of him responding to and criticizing, whether it's the Judaizers in Galatians or the Gnostics in Colossians, kind of responding to a movement of teaching that's coming into the church, and him, writing the epistle in the context of responding or criticizing false teaching that is coming in. And so all that to say, I don't think there's nothing wrong with offering public criticism of a group or a group's behaviors and actions when they are as blatantly problematic as the WMSs are. And we can do that in a loving way. I think when you will have, those people making these sort of comments, when you will have something, substantive to say, will be, if we're being rude and disrespectful and mean and hateful, and when we start kind of exhibiting the same behaviors perhaps as the WMS exhibits, that's when I would want the challenge and to say, hey, you're being kind of a jerk about this, or you're not doing this in a loving way. That's criticism I would appreciate. But when it's just a general, hey, why are you just finding fault in somebody else? Or why are you wasting your time or spending so much time just criticizing this or that? To me, it's just a silly question. It's like, this. Go ahead, Kelsey.
And Caroline made a good point. She says the WMS has no fault, no, they find fault in other people's faith. Yeah, what you just put up. Yeah, they find, they say everybody else, and think about how they talk about the Catholic Church too, right? They break it down. They say these people aren't just wrong, they're the Antichrist, right? And so, like, they literally teach that everybody else is in Babylon and they will be destroyed. And even Zhang Gil Jah, she gave a sermon saying, how great it'll be in the last days to watch all these other people burn.
Right.
Like, so it's kind of interesting that, we are talking about the WMS, and this video is about copyright. We weren't even going over the doctrine, right? And they take it to, oh, well, you're just picking it apart, our faith. Like, no, that's
yeah.
Like,
nobody cares if you want to worship a female god or wear, a veil, or go to church on Saturday instead of Sunday. Like, do what you want. Just don't hurt people. Don't abuse people. And then when there are criticisms, you don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to be a I'm trying to pick my words without saying what I want to say.
Just say it. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Well, just, it's kind of a shitty move for them to, try to silence criticism with such petty ways. If there was something legit, but they're trying to find any little means in order to shut down criticism. And, the wolf's tail is showing. You could see that this is not somebody who cares about truth being out there. This is not somebody who is open to any sort of criticism. They're just trying to be the only source of information about their organization. And that can't be. There has to be both sides available. They would want it. If it was just, criticism, they'd want to have their moment to be able to defend their church. They'd want to be able to be represented equally under, the freedom of religion. But in the same way, we have the freedom to criticize. So they want their rights, but they don't want anyone else to have their rights.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Esperanza commented, how much does the WMS criticize other churches and faiths on a daily basis? They don't like it when someone does it to them. And so real quick, we actually just did an interview with Esperanza, myself and Anthony. And so she is a former member, told her story, has, as all members do, has a unique story, a unique experience that she had while a member. But be looking for that, because that'll be coming hopefully in the next week or two, depending on when I'm able to sit down and do the editing. But that's a great point. It's just, it kind of goes back to what I've made a couple videos now addressing this question. Why do you always pick on the WMS? And my point, what I always come back to is, hey, listen, I promise you, when the WMSCOG stops criticizing every other church and pastor and Christian denomination that exists, when they stop saying in their doctrine, hey, we are the only truth, everybody else out there is possessed by Satan, they're controlled by evil spirits, whatever it is they say. When they stop doing that, I'll stop. How about we make that deal? You guys stop saying that you are the only ones with the truth and everybody else offering different ideas that they're possessed by Satan and that if you go over there, you're going to go to hell. This kind of thing that's communicated to members, because that's the WMS's doctrines. This organization is like built on a foundation of criticizing, demonizing other groups. Like that's at the very foundation of your doctrine and how you present yourself to the world. The first time I ever interacted with WMS members who were preaching to me and trying to get me to a Bible study, that was one of the first things they tried to communicate, is how every other church is, demonic. And that's going to be one of the first things they go to. They'll talk about how no other church keeps the Sabbath like they do. Therefore, every other church is a false church. And so you guys are on a persistent, continual criticism fest. That's all you guys do. That's what constantly flows out of you. That's the culture of your organization, is criticism and demonizing of every other organization out there, every other person out there who believes anything different than you. And so it's quite hypocritical to complain, as Esperanza is saying, when somebody kind of responds to that and offers criticism back toward you, then you can't handle it. You like to throw it out. You like to throw out the criticism on others, but the moment any of it comes to you, you don't respond well to it. And I'm saying you as in the World Mission Society Church of God as a whole, not necessarily the individual members who might be listening.
Yeah, it looks like there's a little bit of a debate going on in the
Yeah.
chat. I'm just trying to figure out what happened.
So
Is there-
if you want to pull up one of the comments from Romario Van Witt, I mean this kind of takes it in the video kind of in a different direction, but they're saying how where is the original how can I be saved? Like they're clearly a member. I'm trying to find the
Okay.
first. Why so much effort in talking about that it is not to show me the gospel? Oh, so maybe why so much effort talking about the copyright and not showing the gospel? And then like, how can I be saved? Tell me how can I be saved? My God already told me. Like they're clearly a member. So I sent a message in here.
Why don't they tell us how to be saved?
Well,
yeah, I would love to hear. I'd love to hear what they say, because what did they say? Passover, then believe God the Mother, then keep the Sabbath, then tithe, then
let's do this, guys. Let's say to Romario, I think that's how you say that. And maybe now I'm hesitating because I'm not sure if this is a person that I think it could be. So I'm going to hold off. What I was going to say is we invite you to come on live with us. If I can figure out, I'll maybe try to figure out if this is the person I'm worried it is, because that would be a waste of time.
Hezekiah,
but
are
perhaps
you Hezekiah?
No, I would be fine with Hezekiah coming on. Honestly, this is another.
I know who you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
this person doesn't seem to. I mean, they have. I've asked twice if they want to join. They haven't, and I know the person you're thinking of would have jumped at it. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's do this. Let's just talk real quick about like I starred those comments because I think that would be good to get to about gospel salvation and all that, and then but let's talk real quick just to kind of finish this up. Acts 5, right? That's a big. This is kind of a big thing that they emphasize. Let me just pull this up here. Oops. Here we go. Okay, so Acts 5:38. Therefore, in the present case, I advise you, leave these men alone. Let them go, for if their purpose or activity is of human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. You will only find yourselves fighting against God. So, Kelsey and Anthony, how does the WMS use this verse? Because I know they like this verse and they'll grab onto it often. So, what is the context in which they will use this and kind of apply it to their situation?
Yeah, they apply it and they say, like, like for people who are critical of them, like, hey, if we are from man, we're gonna fail, but if we're from God, you won't be able to stop us. And then they say, and we're the only church that's growing at the speed that we're growing, and we have millions of members worldwide, so clearly we are from God. Like, that's how I've heard this verse used. But I think, like, it's important to note that you can also look at this verse in terms of, like, Great Life Studios and answering the WMSCOG. Like, if we are from man, we're gonna fail. But if we're from God, you're gonna find yourselves fighting against God. So, like, again, we aren't going around and, filing copyright claims or mass reporting, their stuff, and then they come and then they, with all these petty tactics to try to shut us down instead of engaging in a public debate like Hercules mentioned in the comments. I think they had a really good point. They said Paul had no issue debating in public, yet the WMS is afraid to come on and debate with you or anyone. They hide behind their members and use unethical tactics to silence critics. So again, if the same logic for Acts chapter 5 verse 38 to 39, like if we're from men, we're gonna fail. So just let us fail. Why do you have to try to shut us down? Because if we're from from a religious standpoint, if we're from God, right? You're just fighting against God by doing what you're doing. So,
but they know we're not, right? They know
they
that
don't think
we
we are. They
are
think we're
we are
Satan,
Pharisees, that we're demon possessed. So why? So the question is, why are you worried? If you know we're speaking false things, we're speaking things that are not true, and that you guys are the truth, and we're just criticizing basically this impenetrable stronghold, this castle that cannot be possibly overthrown. Yeah, we're just basically throwing these pebbles against a wall, and nothing is going to hurt. Ultimately, nothing can hurt the truth. Nothing can deviate the truth from the how God wants it to impact the world. But and so, if you really believe that, as you so often use this verse to kind of say that you do, then why do you try to silence those who are throwing the pebbles?
And Romario, because Romario's still not willing to come on a live video, it seems like, but Romario says that the church is already growing. Nobody will be able to stop that. Literally every cult says this. Scientology says they're the fastest growing church. SCJ says they're the fastest growing church. The WMS, anybody who's a member, who's ever been on a short-term mission trip, knows that maybe out of 20 people, out of 20 people baptized, maybe one person will stay. Maybe. And by the time it takes that one person to stay, you've already lost 2 other members. So, and so they say, oh, we expanded our churches. No, what you do is you take people from the bigger churches and send them to another area. You didn't just expand your membership. You just moved people around, the existing membership around, and then had them pay their own money to start up a house church. So you didn't even pay for that house church that's coming up. So
yeah.
Well, I'd also like to throw in about that Acts chapter 5 that there's lawsuits that they filed that they that they failed. So in those cases, you can see that God is with Michelle Cologne and not with the World Mission Society.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, like they've also been begging news organizations. They created like little teams, in the past to go try to solicit. Do you remember it was 2011? Their whole thing was mass media. The gospel will be preached mass media. That's going to be the way that we're going to be able to spread the gospel. And they had groups trying to go to the news. They couldn't get any sort of like big special. Maybe they could show up on like a news organization for like, oh, we're doing a volunteer effort to clean this up or that up. You know, they have like these little clips that they like memorialize and share to all the members, but there is a whole special that was done against the World Mission Society. I believe that was on NBC. And they've been begging and trying to get this one little thing, like their church, to be exposed in the news. Meanwhile, the critical view of their church is what was able to get onto the news. So, you know, it seems exactly the opposite, that their church, not
if this is from God, if
they
this
would
is from
be
God,
able to accomplish their goals, but they can't. You know, and
They
then all
should be
these preaching
successful.
movements, you know, like they have all these baptism goals and preaching movements. Doesn't work. And then when they really get desperate, they have rules from Korea that before baptism now, there needs to be certain studies and things done. When they have a movement and they want to hit a number, they'll throw all that away. Like, yeah, you get anyone baptized. I'm confident that during this one time in New York City, they didn't care who was coming in or what they understood. It was like, if you could tell them to get baptized, then they will do it. Like everything else is thrown out.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? You know what's funny? So the NBC interview that Ronan Farrow did about the church, about, you know, Rebecca Gardner's parents, and then they did one with her, and then John Powers, right? So he actually wrote in his book, because he did a book on the Harvey Weinstein case. It's called Catch and Kill, and he has a line. He has a line in his book about referencing how NBC had like supported him through, you know, his some of his crazy interviews, especially with a Korean, like something about like a litigious Korean doomsday cult. And so I just thought that was so funny, because out of all the interviews Ronan Farrow has done with NBC, what is the only Korean cult that he's done an interview with that, it's like that we I think we know which cult he's talking about there. And I was like, oh, that made the book.
Yeah. Well, you know, as far as the point about, well, we're the fastest growing church, we're growing, and that kind of proves that we're from God. That whole, I mean, that's something that you hear from a whole, you know, you could hear from Mormons or Jehovah's. I mean, you could, I'm sure all of them at one point in their history have said something like that. I mean, even Christians can make fallacious arguments like that, you know. And one of the funniest responses that I've heard is I brought that up to a friend, Nasser, actually. He's a former Muslim that I've interviewed him on Great Light Studios as well in the past, but I brought that up, that's one of the arguments I'll use often, is, you know, that they're growing so fast, so that obviously means they're from God. And he just said, you know, well, Coca-Cola's growing pretty fast too. And, you know, you just think of that, like, what is that? McDonald's, look at the growth of McDonald's. Does that prove it's from God, or that it's, you know, the divine inspired fast food restaurant chain because it's grown larger than any other? I think it's larger than any other. Actually, I think Subway might be bigger than McDonald's, surprisingly, or have more restaurants. I'm not really sure. But the point here is just to emphasize this, you know, Acts 5 in the present case. And just think about this: World Mission Society, Church of God. These words that you will apply to yourself. We are from God, so therefore nothing can stop us. No matter what criticisms out there, we are going to you know, withstand it and come out through it, because the truth will prevail. God is on our side, all that. Therefore, in the present case, you know, you had the apostles, the disciples speaking the gospel, and even speaking out against the religious rulers. Basically, what in this context, I believe this is where they kind of charge the Pharisees and the religious rulers with the blood of Jesus. They basically say, you killed him. They're offering criticism about the Pharisees and the religious rulers and how they dealt with this man, Jesus. Well, the religious rulers, like the World Mission Society Church of God in this situation, they didn't like that. And so they wanted to shut them up. But then you have this again. If these men are, leave them alone. In the present case, I advise you to leave them alone. Let them go. For if their purpose or activity is of human origin, it will fail. If it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. So on the one hand, if that's true, if you believe that scripture, then why not do what it says? World Mission Society, Church of God. If we're of human origin, if what we are doing is of human origin, it's going to fail. That's what you say. That's how you use this verse all the time. If we are possessed by Satan, if we're following, if we've completely lost the true gospel because we don't keep Passover and Sabbath, and we're teaching a false gospel and all that, we are going to fail because we're not of God. So why not take this, in this present case, leave us alone and let us fail. Let us do what we do, and God will eventually, sooner or later, God will cut you down, as good old Johnny Cash says.
Well, I'll say too that I've heard in the church too that, when they say, well, if there really are true brother and sister, if, they were selected by God, because they believe that when you go preaching, you're going to find and bring people who are going to be your true brother and sister, like those God selected and predestined to be, saved. And you're going to find people who come and then go. But they said, if there really are brother and sister, they're not going to listen to the slanderers. They're not going to listen, and they're not going to be affected by that. And they're still going to stay. So, does slander, does the opposition, do critical opinions take away your true brothers and sisters, or no? Or are we just helping them lose out on the ones that they would have wasted their time on because they would have left anyway? And it does say, they use a verse, they really belong to us. They never would have left.
We're just separating the wheat from the chaff is all. We're just helping that process.
Exactly. Your true God selected, predestined, chosen before the creation of the world members are not going to be affected by this. So why do you have a dedicated person to go from country to country, language to language, waiting and watching videos in order to pounce on a single image that might pop up for 5 seconds? Why are you dedicating so much effort into trying to shut down criticism if it's ineffective, if it doesn't really do anything against your church? Because they know that their church is BS. And if people are going to hear not just their perspective but critical perceptions as well, they're going to be able to critically think about whether or not this church is true and find out, well, it's not, so I'm not going to stay. But I did there's one really interesting thing happening in the chat right now. They're talking about the wide gate, narrow gate.
Yeah,
they're talking about, like, because the WMSCOG, Juchul Kim, the general pastor, wrote in his book that salvation will not come from a big church, but from a small church. And then, then they want to boast about,
but then they boast about their size.
And then their intro video is all about, look at these giant churches we have. So, it's they kind of have a little bit of both going on. They're like, we're good because we're small. And then it's like, we're good because we're large. It's like, which one is it? Are you a small church, or are you a large church? Are you succeeding and growing, or are you the small church that salvation will be found in, according to your general pastor? So, they
like to have their cake and eat it too constantly.
Yeah. So they're full of contradictions.
Which is it's the same as this verse we're discussing. It's just another. They want to have the verse. They want it to apply to them. Oh yes, word of God, so nothing can touch us when it works. But then when somebody starts speaking out, it's like, well, we're gonna throw out everything that verse says. We're going to throw out what it says. We're going to demonstrate that we don't actually believe that verse, and we don't actually want to hold to the principle within it. And we're going to go start filing lawsuits against former members and trying to shut them up. And so you said you wanted to get to that comment. Let's do that real quick. I just want to make sure before I don't want to forget that I know that there is a response that the WMS would give when we criticize that they file lawsuits against former members, or that they try to get videos removed from YouTube. I know one of the things, actually, Berdine, another former member we've interviewed on this channel, she said in a comment that was on one of the community posts, it's not in the live chat, but she said this is so irritating for the current members to think or use the analogy that if someone is talking bad about your parents, would you just sit there and not do anything? It's total BS because they're siding with bullying and abuse because that's what their parents do. They bully people because they don't want them to stand up for themselves, and quite frankly, don't want their own members to stand up for themselves either. And they all are displaying Stockholm syndrome. So a lot of interesting things.
Can I say something real quick with that analogy? Okay, because you're using the analogy of parents.
Yes.
Most parents know their children.
Real quick, Kelsey, clarify what that is, because this is within what Birding said is what would be probably from a lot of members. What you're going to hear is a response to what we're saying here. We're criticizing that they try to get videos removed from YouTube or they file lawsuits, and we say, hey, look, that doesn't look like how Jesus taught his followers to respond. Right. And so in response to that, they'd say, okay, well, if somebody is saying bad things about your mom and dad, would you just stand there and let them do it? That's kind of what's being said here.
The thing is, though, my mom and dad know my name, right? Zhang Gil Jah doesn't know your name.
Yeah.
She probably didn't know my name until after I left, right? So that analogy already, like that, because the church does use that, right? Like you're not just gonna like if someone's saying something bad about your mom, you're not just gonna like let it be. You're gonna do something about it, right? But again, Zhang Gil Jah is not your mother. She doesn't know your name. She could pass you on the street and not know who you are.
Have no idea.
No idea, right? So that already just breaks down right there.
Yeah. Anthony, do you have any thoughts about that response? If somebody says in response to what we're saying, well, basically the WMS is justified in trying to report videos and filing lawsuits because, you don't want people to say bad things about your parents. So,
well, I mean, you could look at modern day celebrities. How often do you see like the children of a celebrity being made fun of, like becoming an activist or fighting against news organizations, or, you don't really see that sort of thing occur because it's just kind of part of the role. That's what they've taken on for themselves. But, you don't really see children defending their parents like that, or going in for copyright violations or things like that. It's just, it's just a weird analogy. Yeah, I get it. Like, you really believe this, you want to defend it, you want to fight for it. That's great. But, you can't just silence, because we're not going against them for no reason. We're talking about their methods. We're talking about things that they're doing. And I really think that was a great example. Like, if your parent, like, what if your parent was Hitler? What if you had an awful like parent who's doing bad things? Like, do you still defend them? If your parent was a murderer, do you defend them? Like, it's sort of the same thing. Your mother is leading an organization that's exploiting people, is like forcing people into different marriages, is forcing people, to give up their time and money, and, depriving them of sleep and doing all these things that many, many, many people are saying, yes, this is what I experienced. This is what from across the globe. It's not just like, oh, this is my story and I'm just one person. Everyone who leaves with the same story about the same abuses. If that's your mother, like, maybe you should talk to your mom about the way she conducts herself, because it's really shitty. So,
well, except
maybe
you can't get a hold of her.
Do you have her phone number? Can you call your mom? Why don't you write a letter to her, so your overseer can read it? Maybe he'll give the message to her.
So I would just point, because the World Mission Society Church of God is a group that so emphasizes that they are the only ones who can, reveal the truth of the Bible and unpack its mysteries, and who really understand it. Like, they are the ones who understand the Bible in their minds, and they're devoted to the Bible. They believe it's God's word. They believe it's what leads us to the truth of how we should live and what God requires of us, and so on and so forth. So I would just say, when they offer that response of, hey, well, how would you act if that was your mom or dad? Wouldn't you want to defend them? Well, first I would say, well, yeah, defend. I would even say to WMS members, defend your beliefs if you want to do that. That's what we welcome you to do by coming onto videos and defend yourself. Come into the comments and make your arguments. We're constantly inviting whether members or the leadership within the WMS, as high up as you want to go, they are welcome to come onto this channel and defend your heavenly parents. Make a defense. We are inviting you to do that. And so I'm just saying you can make a defense. There's a difference between making a defense and acting like a child in this scenario. If I'm standing here and you're standing over there with your parents, and I've had a bad experience with your parents, and I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I'm saying, hey, listen, this is my opinion. Your mom and dad, they did this and this, and I had this experience with them, and I don't think what they did here is right. I think this was wrong of them to do. If I'm saying that, the way you could defend them is to say, well, give me evidence, and you try to get me to prove what I'm saying, and you disagree with me if you want to. A bad way to defend your parents in that scenario would be to come over and, try to duct tape my mouth and try to just shut me up. One of those is criminal. The other one is reasonable and rational. And so, so I just don't, even from the get-go, that response doesn't work, because nobody's saying you can't defend yourselves. Nobody's telling you not to defend your mother and father. We are welcoming you to come and
Zhang Gil Jah and the WMS leaders. They're
yes,
saying
right. Yeah. They're saying, yeah.
Don't talk to us.
Right. They're telling you not to go on and publicly defend them. But so there's that point. You guys can defend. We're not asking you to not defend your mother and father. We're not asking you to do that. We're just saying there's a right and wrong way to go about that. And the way the WMS goes about it by trying to silence people is not the right way. And then the other thing would just be real quick, because this group is so focused on the Bible, I would just say, why are you using that analogy? Why are you wording it in the way of saying, well, what would you do if somebody was talking about your mom and dad? I would just say, well, as a group that's supposed to be following, the truth of the Bible, you're supposed to be the one true church. Shouldn't you be saying, well, what did Jesus command us to do? How did Jesus tell us to respond to our enemies? Like, what? It seems like you're going immediately to this emotional analogy, or this, you're kind of relying on your own life experience. You're saying, well, how would I do this if I was in this scenario? Instead of what you should be doing is, well, what did Jesus say about these situations? He said, blessed are you if men persecute you, if they revile you, if they speak all kinds of evil against you. He said, and that's what the WMS will say that too. Like, oh, if we're slandered, we're blessed because we're just being persecuted. But then when they're being persecuted, they try to shut the mouths of those persecuting them. Jesus said to love your enemies. He said, pray for them. He said, if they slap you on the right cheek, turn to them, let them slap you on the left. And so, the point of bringing that up is just to say, why World Mission Society Church of God and World Mission Society Church of God members, why do you disobey that? You so blatantly disregard that command of Jesus. You don't care about what he says there. And so why is it that that's not your standard for how you should respond to criticism like ours?
And think about it. And think about it too. Like, if Apostle Paul, like, what would Apostle Paul do? Because they claim to follow the example of the apostles in Christ, right? What would the Apostle Paul do? Would he be flagging videos for copyright if he existed today? Or would he be taking the opportunity to engage in a public debate to defend his doctrine, right? He wouldn't be hiding behind, a username, being a keyboard warrior. He'd be in the front lines on a video, defending.
Loving us, showing respect and gentleness as he's tried to share the truth with us.
Right.
Yeah. Not just trying to shut our mouths, It's just like, put yourself in the scenario of Acts 5 that we read earlier, or just go and read through Acts, where you see the religious rulers trying to silence the disciples who are preaching. Like, in that scenario, which of us fits the characters better? Which party here, either us or the WMS or the other YouTubers as well who have been, attacked by the WMS, which of us fits better into the category of the apostles or the Pharisees?
I do want to touch on that point, because one of the things that the Pharisees were doing to put Jesus on the cross was they had false witnesses come forward and give false testimony, right?
Oh.
And when you look at what the violation was that they tried to get Jordan's video, because he had a video where in the thumbnail there was a uniquely created AI rendering of the image with Ahnsahnghong sitting on a rock. So it was like a uniquely created brand new image that was put out there. They lied and said that that was their image, that was, of their own, copyrighted. That's not true. Like, they completely changed the story. They lied about what he had done in order to get his video flagged. It wasn't even something that sticks. He had a uniquely created image, to put out there so he wouldn't get copyright violations. He did everything he was supposed to do, but they lied. Whoever that they had assigned in order to find these things, they gave false testimony. So that's not the acts of like a godly organization. They were just trying to shut him down. They didn't even care if they needed to lie to do it. They could lie without blushing or feeling bad. They are able to just easily put out lies in order to get what they want done. So it's definitely the characteristic of the opposition against Christ, the way that they're acting.
Yeah. And it goes a little bit further too with that, because even if I had not used an AI rendering and they flagged the video, if I had used the original picture, that still would have been a lie. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that photo, and I don't know, I'm not going to pull it up because we don't want this video flagged, and they will flag it if we pull up the photo we're talking about.
Members know that the picture of him with his shirt a little unbuttoned, sitting on the rock,
sitting on the rock.
Overlooking something in the woods.
He's by in mountains or something. But that's the photo we're referring to. But I'm pretty sure that photo belongs to the NCPOG, right? Or have we learned more on that yet?
Yeah, Ahnsahnghong has had one church, I believe it was the Church of God Jesus Witnesses, that he was mostly down in Busan. And then when he died, the church split into 3 groups. Most members think just 2, but it's 3. That one that he created remains even till today. It's still there. And then it's a New Covenant Passover Church of God, and then the World Mission Society Church of God, which had a different name before that as well. But they all left. Like all 3 of these, took a lot of the teachings of Ahnsahnghong. The World Mission Society just redacted whatever they didn't like that didn't fit what they wanted to teach. So right. So I believe that they all have images. I don't even know if it belongs to them. It might belong to one of the other 2 churches that were spun off of what he had created.
So all that to say that the WMS, as Anthony is saying, their grounds for even filing many of these copyright reports, these complaints that they're filing, are not legitimate to begin with, because they're having to kind of manipulate the facts about who owns the photos that are being, complained about in the first place. And then, as Anthony said, yes, a couple of the videos that were flagged were AI renderings of Ahnsahnghong, and so nothing about that should be a problem. I have the right to do that. I have legal rights to do that. And Kelsey, I know the last thing I think that I know about this is the fair use law. I don't know if you wanted to go into that, or if you had another.
Yeah, I do, because
point.
that fits in pretty well with what you just said about the AI rendering, right? Because the fair use law. I'm pulling up my notes right now. But Jordan, if you could open up that link I sent you.
Okay. And just real quick, I am, guys, you watching, I am I'm starring comments as I see them and questions that we'll try to get to those here in a minute. We just want to kind of finish up about the topic we intended to talk about, and then we'll try to do more engaging with your comments and stuff.
Yeah, and
so
it's funny, Anthony, Romario says it's too late for you in reference to, changing your mind and being saved. It's too late for you, Anthony. I'm sorry.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's too late because he knows too much now. He knows the facts.
But I guess for me,
Kelsey,
I still have hope, I guess.
Yeah.
Kelsey, the link you're referring to, was that in our text thread?
Yeah, isn't that yes. Oh, no, not in the text thread. It was in the email I sent you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let me pull that up real quick. Guys, also, while I'm doing that, I always forget to mention this, but in one of the recent videos with Anthony, he was wearing a shirt. It's Ahnsahnghong, and then it has the greater sign, or Jesus greater sign, Ahnsahnghong. And so for those of you who don't know, I have like a merch store with some different shirts and things like that. And so that's just another way. If you buy a shirt, it helps support the channel a little bit. And so I just posted a link there in the comments. There's also a link in the description of the video if you want to check out some of the t-shirts and stuff that we have available. So just wanted to mention that real quick because I know I would forget if I didn't do that now. And now let me see if I can find that email, Kelsey.
Yeah. And then maybe Jordan, if you could post this this link in the caption of the video once this video gets posted.
Oh yes, I can add that now. Do you have the link? Is there any way you can share it on your screen? Is that
no, because I am using my phone.
Oh, what about you, Anthony? It's making me, I'm on my computer I usually don't work on.
I mean, it's
and
okay.
so it's making me
share it. We can put it in the comments, but I just wanted to kind of read what the fair use law is and just kind of quickly explain it. So the fair use law is what allows us to be able to take something existing and provide some critique on it. So like taking a clip from one of their sermon videos that they make public on YouTube, taking that and then taking a clip of it and then giving our commentary on it. And so the law says, notwithstanding the provisions of section 106 and 106A, which you can read on your own time, the fair use of copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction in copies or phono records or by any other means specified by that section for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, including multiple copies for classroom use, scholarship, or research, is not an infringement of copyright. In determining whether the use made of work in any particular case is a fair use, the factors to be considered shall include there's 4 factors. Number 1, the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is for profit or is for nonprofit educational purposes, which ours is for educational purposes. We're just, again, providing commentary on, all their doctrines and whatnot. Number 2, the nature of the copyrighted work, which means like we're not, like their work is not like, it's not like a published, well, how do I say? Like I have the actual kind of easier explanation of that. So give me just a minute. So this one is, it says this factor looks at how the used work aligns with copyright's goal of promoting creative expression. Using a highly creative work like a novel, movie, or song is less likely that could be considered fair use, which again, we're not critiquing a novel, movie, or song, right? Compared to using a factual work like a technical article or news item. Also, if the work hasn't been published, it's less likely to be considered fair use. Again, with Ahnsahnghong's image, they don't own the rights to his image. Because another leak I sent you, Jordan, is the link to the NCPCOG site where they clearly state that they have the rights to his image, which
which email did you send it to? If it's my personal one, don't
it's
give
probably
that
your
one. But
personal
it's
one.
okay.
Yeah.
Because
So
I am having trouble finding those, but that's okay. So you're saying the NCPOG on their site, they claim ownership
Yes.
of the photos.
Yes.
Okay.
And so
which goes back again to emphasizing the fact that they're the reports, the copyright complaints and reports are illegitimate in the first place. Like Anthony said, there's some dishonesty in the reports because they're saying, hey, this is my photo, YouTube.
Yeah.
Take this video down, because they're misusing my photo, and that's just not true. That is not the situation.
It's
because when you see that. Oh, sorry, Anthony.
I was gonna say that, like, for Ahnsahnghong's images, but I think maybe for the red heifer, she might be able to be claimed under their authority for their copyright, but not for Ahnsahnghong.
Yeah. So like the only way that they could, my understanding is the only way that they can use the image, any image of Ahnsahnghong, is if they do kind of like what you had mentioned, Jordan, like a artistic rendition or something, or that they took the photo, or if somebody in the WMS took the photograph themselves. So like when you go to their WA TV site, I think there's only like one or two images of Ahnsahnghong, which when you click on them, they lead to, or anything about Ahnsahnghong leads to an external site called Ahnsahnghong.com. And on that site, I only found 4 images of Ahnsahnghong, 3 of which are from the same event, that Passover of 1984, and then 1 is of a baptism. So again, they don't own the rights to his image, so it's either those photos belong to somebody within the WMS who was around at that time of Ahnsahnghong, or they're illegally using these images. I'm not saying they are illegally using these images, but I'm just saying, like, if they
saying they're not
those photos, then that's what that is. So, but there's 2 more things with the fair use. The like, there's the 4 factors. The third factor is the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. So we're not taking their whole sermon video and putting it on our channel and critiquing it all the way through. No, we even clips have been a minimal thing. So, and then number 4, the fourth factor, the effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. We're not taking their image and making something new and then selling it, right? So, and then it says the fact that a work is unpublished shall not itself bar a finding of fair use if such finding is made upon consideration of all the above factors. So we have not done anything to violate this. It is all fair use. So, So all the YouTube claims, we can fight them. So
and for the one image though that they have of Ahnsahnghong, the one that ended up being a drawing, it's like the picture of him
that people get when they go to Korea.
Exactly, because they had that created because they didn't have like a nice photo of their own that they had rights to. So I think that if if we're not able to use that image, if they're gonna fight us tooth and nail, I think we could use, like, I made this so we can, this is our version. So
show that again. Hold that up again real quick.
So this is we could
so that was a point I wanted to make, is that, hey, the WMS, just anytime I put a picture of Ahnsahnghong up, they flag it and they take it down. So it's like, well, okay, we'll just start using these artistic renderings.
We'll make our own art. So so in regards to the statement on the NCPCOG side, I know you can't see it, but I'll send you the link, Jordan, that you can post it. But it says in 2017, We will actively respond to the misuse of Ahnsahnghong's copyright and portrait rights. Copyright and portrait rights belong to Songpa Church of the New Covenant Passover Church of God, and any misuse will result in legal action. Number 1, when Ahnsahnghong's photo is used without permission, and 2, when a truth booklet is stolen and published on the internet or a booklet is published. So, that
Yeah.
second one that I just read out loud makes me realize, oh, that's why they don't sell, that WMS doesn't sell their books to the public.
Oh,
Probably,
interesting.
but,
Yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting, because if the NCPOG doesn't really own the rights to those photos, like that's
No, the NCPOG
they're getting themselves.
owns the rights to the photos. Copyright and
No,
portrait rights belong.
yes, right. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if they didn't, like,
okay.
basically the WMS might say, oh, well, they're just making that up. We really own the rights, but they would be, by making a statement like that, they are setting themselves up for pretty big legal trouble, I would think. I think that's not something you'd want to publicize as a organization on your website.
Right.
Posting these photos and then saying, I own the rights to these.
Yeah.
You're putting like a copyright on them.
And if this wasn't true, the WMS, with all their money in the world,
oh yeah,
would have fought this.
They would have the photos. They would have the photos. They would be using them. And so the point of saying all that is to say the photos that we have used, that the WMS is flagging us for, do not belong to the WMS. And so not only are they being childish and petty by trying to get the videos taken down in the first place, because Acts 5, if we're not of God, we're going to fail anyways. Leave us alone. And 2, they're not your photos. You don't have the right to complain about how they're being used because you don't own them. It's the NCPOG can do that. They haven't so far, at least. They probably haven't seen our videos. I don't know, but they haven't flagged any of the ones that we've used Ahnsahnghong in. I actually emailed them. I tried to reach out to ask for permission. I haven't heard back, and I doubt I will. But yeah. So Anthony, it looked like you might have wanted to jump in there.
No. We just got
okay. I read you wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, unless we have anything else we want to cover on that, the purpose of us talking about this is just to let you guys know again. I feel like the public deserves to know and should be informed about how the WMS operates. And I think you can discern for yourself. You have the information. Is this behavior that you would expect to see in the one true Church of God? Is this how they should be behaving and responding to their critics? Does this, does flagging videos that are offering criticism of your doctrines or your practices and reporting them for copyrights, filing lawsuits, all these other legal things they get into, does that look like how Jesus commanded his followers to respond to persecution and to their enemies? Just go read Luke 6:27 through 30, and you decide for yourself. Because from where we stand, we're saying this, we're talking about this because to us, this is just another evidence, another clear demonstration of what the World Mission Society Church of God is. That is a high control, high demand, manipulative, narcissistic cult group that is dangerous, that can't handle criticism, and practices information control.
Can I just also really quickly add that they've used other people's YouTube videos when they do presentations, basically making hit attack educations against people who spoke out online. And I believe that they even used photos from, I believe, from Michelle's Facebook page or something like that in order to talk negatively about her to the whole church.
Yeah.
So they could take images and they could take videos from other people and then use it however they want. So I just also there's so many different layers of hypocrisy within this church,
right?
That I just they just keep coming to mind. So I just wanted to throw that point out there as well.
Yeah. And that's the point. Is it's not that if this group was just doing these weird things, like kind of you alluded to earlier, Anthony, they believed in female deity. They believed that they needed to keep Passover or Saturday Sabbath.
Yeah,
That's
whatever.
fine. We're talking about these things because it's not just that. It's not just even that they flag videos or that they file lawsuits, but that's just a demonstration of the overall culture that is just, permeates the World Mission Society Church of God, that ultimately leads to countless people being abused and hurt, and their lives being changed in unalterable, unfixable in some sense. Like, you can't go back. You can't undo the things that the WMS does in people's lives. You guys could attest to that. 10 years you were in there, and I'm sure you've shared your stories in interviews before, but just the way they take people's lives, and people are hurt. This group hurts people. Maybe we're not saying physically, but I think it causes, in my opinion, from the information I have gathered, physical or emotional, not physical, emotional and spiritual harm, and maybe sometimes physical, especially if you listen to Corey McClellan, who's in the chat right now. Hello, Corey. Listen to her story about her experiences in the kids' room. That would maybe allude to the possibility that there is, in some cases, physical harm that is done to people. And so this group is bad because it hurts people. We're not just spending all this time because we disagree with their doctrines. We disagree with how the very culture of what this group is hurts people, and that's why we continue to make videos like this one. So unless you guys have anything else you want to say on the topic, let's try to get into some of the comments. And what do you guys? Yeah, go ahead.
Call out that Romario. They're preaching in the Netherlands, they say, and that they will one day come on, but I guess they're boasting about tomorrow and they're not wanting to come on now. I just want to point that out, because that's just, you have the time to be on here, to be in the comments, active in the comments, yet you can't come on and do a live video. Like, that's just the typical WMS behavior. And then when somebody calls them out, they try to change the subject. So Corey was calling them out, and then they said, "Oh, I just love your reaction," trying to change the topic so that we would, enough messages come by so that it can, be lost in the comments that, they're not coming on.
Let's just read this for Romario real quick. A command, if you will, from Peter in 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. So this is something that you have an obligation to listen to, Romario, as one who claims to be speaking for the one true Church of God and following the Bible. Revere Christ as Lord. Always, he says, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope you have. Do this with gentleness and respect. So right now, Romario, in this very moment, we are asking you to give us an answer. Give us a reason. Come on and show your face. Be prepared to be bold and stand up for what you believe in. If you have the truth, if you're on the side of truth, you have nothing to fear. We are all demon-possessed, Satan-controlled, false, God-worshiping pagans. What can we possibly do to you?
Yeah, take the clip.
Hey, well, that'll be another example. No, I'm saying that's your perception of us, right? That's the church's teaching about what we are, who we are. So why would you be afraid to come on and talk with us? Now, just to clarify, because it would be funny if they make a video of that. I'm not saying that's what we are, but that's what you think we are. And so I think it's just, it demonstrates a lack of integrity, a lack of courage to come in the comments and you'll say all these things in the comments, Romario. You'll act all confident in the comments, but the moment we say, okay, well, let's just have a conversation about it. Come talk with us. We will be respectful. We will give you time to talk. And then you come up with excuses to not do that. Maybe later, maybe next time. If you have the truth has nothing to hide. The truth should be just waiting for any opportunity to speak out, especially when those who are supposedly like us speaking against the truth and causing people to be led astray. You have an obligation, a responsibility to say something to us to stop that, right? And so,
yeah, it's just, yeah, this is where I lose patience a little bit with the members, because it's like, I know why they're not coming on. I know that they know that they're not even supposed to be here in the comments, right? That they're not even supposed to be watching these videos, and they know that too. The church will never tell them to come on unless they're part of the internet team, which it's kind of clear that Romario is not part of the internet team based on how they're responding. So they're clearly disobeying the church by being in here in the comments, which I'm happy that they are here watching the video. But it's like,
right.
If you're going to be here in the comments talking about, that the church is right, that some of you guys can, God will deal with you guys and stuff like that. Yo, come on the video and have a discussion. We've demonstrated in the past we can have a discussion, and if you, they say they don't follow up. Yeah, okay, so, it's because that they know they're not supposed to be here. They are not prepared to defend their doctrine, right? And so it just shows a lot about their character, that it's like them and that Hezekiah person who just wants to comment on every single video, which is, hey, that helps our algorithm, that helps actually our cause when they do that. So Romario being here giving us an extra view is helping the algorithm to push our video to more people. So in the end they're helping us, but it's just I lose patience with
yeah, tell your church friends to go on here and also argue with you.
Yeah.
Let's get a few more in here.
Yeah, right. Yes, I agree. It's just, if for one thing, you guys aren't supposed to be on here. And I think I saw Corey maybe mention earlier that you are eating right now, Romario, according to your doctrine, you're eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yep.
You will surely die. That's what they taught.
You will surely die. Yeah. And so, as you are proclaiming your confidence in the truth, you're a walking self-contradiction, because you're saying out of your one side of your mouth, this is the truth that I believe. I believe this is true. I believe the WMS. And out of the other, while at the very same moment, you are disobeying and disregarding what you have been explicitly told, which is, do not go to the internet, especially don't go to videos like these. I mean, this is the definition of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, according to the WMS. This is, but you're still here. Well, we're glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I really am. I hope you're listening to the things being said, but I also hope you're considering how contradictory you're being in so many ways. So there's a couple of comments I've starred.
Romario saying you guys don't. Okay, we don't affect you. Okay, you're still disobeying what the church says. You're still disobeying God the Mother. So
which we're fine to do, because it's not really literally the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is not. That was just a scare tactic that Mother gave to you in order to stop people from being able to be exposed to any information besides what the church puts out there. That's why they created that. They want to control all the information that you get. So it's good that you're here. And even though she said that you will surely die from it, that's not true, because
you're fine.
You're gonna die just the same in the World Mission Society as everyone outside. Like, everybody dies, So
Yeah. You're not under any sort of judgment or anything that should make you fearful for being here. That is total baloney. Them not wanting you to go to the internet is self-preservation. They don't want they don't want you to know the truth. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this comment just for a few minutes. So Romario earlier in the chat said, "How can I be saved?" And so, I would just emphasize that, the WMS would emphasize Passover. They would call Passover the core of the gospel, and that you have to keep Passover in order to be saved. And so what would you guys say to, I guess, the WMS is version of how they would answer this question? How can I be saved? Because he's coming with that assumption. It's a question of, it's like, well, we're the only ones who are doing what needs to be done to be saved. So what do you think you could possibly have to offer?
Well, one of the things that while in the church, they said, if you think you're standing firm in your faith, be careful so you don't fall. That if you feel like you're saved, then you need to worry more about your faith. Because they like you to feel very uncertain about salvation. My thing is, like, how can I be saved? The first thing is, like, this video is not about salvation. I mean, it's a great topic, and we have spoke about it. Jordan spoke about it. There's so many different, resources out there speaking about salvation and the biblical salvation, but we can't talk about everything in every video. This one is specifically talking about the manipulation that they're trying to do in order to silence critics. However, I would throw that right back at Romario and ask, according to the World Mission Society, how are you saved? And now, like every cult group, every single one of these organizations, they'll start with a very benign teaching of the outside, but the more you get into their teaching and the doctrine, the more this list is going to expand. And we've talked about this so much in the past. They say, oh, be baptized, keep Passover, salvation. Okay, but you need Sabbath day, and not just Sabbath day, you need third day, and you need to tithe, and then you need to go preaching, you need to bear fruit, and then you need to keep the feast and the 5 a.m.s, and then you need to, participate in your team, and you need to respond to your group meet, you need to, and then the list just goes on and on. And even though, like, your whole life you're not sleeping, you're not eating right, every day you're in the church, and you're still scared that you're not going to be saved, because this list is never ending. The more you do, salvation's always just a few inches away. Like, you always have to keep going forward, like a carrot on a string. So how can I be saved is like, well, what would the World Mission Society say to you? Because it's a lot.
The issue
in the Bible.
Yeah, the issue is that he's not, this person isn't asking this question in a genuine way of actually wanting to know what we think about it. It's sort of, at least the way I'm taking it, because this is the attitude I'm getting from this person, how it so often is. It's more of an antagonistic, you don't have any idea what the Bible says about salvation. We obviously know how to be saved because we're the only ones keeping fast. So it's the question itself is I don't think a sincere one, which makes it probably not worth a lot of time trying to answer it. But I do just real quick, because me and Edgar and I just made 2 videos that we put out a week or 2 ago that you can find on Great Light Studios. I'll probably combine them and release them on this channel, hopefully in the next couple weeks. But it's the video talking about what is the gospel. And so that's kind of the whole purpose of this video. And we've kind of just scratched the surface. We have a lot more to talk about on that topic. But what is the gospel? And so two videos where we cover that. And so if you do want to know more about our thoughts about that specific question, you can go there. But just real quick, one verse, because I think I want to not leave this question totally unaddressed, I would just look to places like Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, for example. So, for by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of work, so that no one may boast. So, one thing I have an issue with is, what do we mean by saved? I think there's a lot of assumptions behind that word about salvation and what salvation is and what it is not. And immediately people think of getting out of hell and getting into heaven. Like, how do I get out of, make sure I don't go to hell? And I think so often in the Bible, that's not the context of how that word saved and salvation is being used. And so that's a whole other video that would be fun to go into. But I just think there's assumptions behind that question that make it very difficult to give a simple answer to. But in general, regardless of what we do and do not mean by saved, by salvation, I have issue with the idea that every time we see the word saved, it's referring to God getting us out of hell and getting us into heaven. I think it's not that.
Can I also say one thing too? Like, how many verses? How many verses? Because this is Ephesians, right? But even when you look in the Gospels, like, how many verses does it say that to be, like, when Jesus is asked, "What do you need to do to be saved?" Right? How many verses say they need to believe in Jesus and go to Him and love your neighbor? Like, how many verses say that compared to? Is there even one verse in the Bible where Jesus says directly, "You need to keep the Passover for salvation"? There's not one single verse where He said directly that. They have to, string verses together to come up with that conclusion. And not even verses that are located near each other or even necessarily in the same book to come to that conclusion. So
no, one of the points I emphasize a lot that I still think has been unanswered by the World Mission Society Church of God is this question about why didn't the apostles preach Passover ever? You see the book of Acts, the one historical record that shows what it was that the apostles, right after the resurrection and ascension of Christ, what did they go out and preach? What did they go out and tell people about what God wanted them to do? And not one time in all the recorded sermons and gospel messages and proclamations in the book of Acts do any of the apostles mention Passover. Not one time. They don't mention it. They don't bring it up. But yet the WMS says Passover is...
They just don't mention it's the way to receive salvation.
Yeah. Acts refers to Passover, but what I'm saying is the apostles don't preach it. You'll see the apostles preaching the gospel. You'll see them preaching about Jesus and what it is God wants people to do in response to Him. But they never bring up Passover, not one single time. They don't bring up any feast. And so if Passover, as the WMS says, is the core of the gospel, then I see only two options. One, the apostles proclaimed they were teaching an insufficient, like an incomplete version of the gospel. They left out the central message. And so they were preaching a false gospel, really. So either they were doing that accidentally and they're just dumb, or they just forgot what the gospel really was. And so they're just preaching a false gospel unintentionally, or they were intentionally deceptive and lied about what Jesus really believed. And they left out the most important parts of it because they never talked about it.
And I mean, it is mentioned in the Bible that the scripture is carried along by the Holy Spirit. So, if they claim that is Ahnsahnghong, who's the Holy Spirit, who carried along, this New Testament where everything was recorded, then you'd think that Ahnsahnghong would be emphasizing all over the place, Passover, Passover, Passover. These were things written to the early church so that they could keep their faith and know what to do. These are letters that were recorded. You would think that somewhere along the way that it would be clearly stated, Passover gives you eternal life. You must celebrate this at the appointed time. Clear instructions would be given. And they always say that, like, even though it wasn't the World Mission Society, but rather the Catholic Church that created the Bible, like that put the books together, they say, well, you don't think God can control, and protect the book? They always say that when it comes to like who actually put the books of the Bible together. So if they're going to make
put together by the Antichrist, right?
Yeah. So you would think that they would, have saved a book or a letter that would have mentioned this. if it were really vital or important, it would say it's somewhere within it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't.
And to clarify, as we always do, we're not saying keeping the Passover is bad. We're not saying Sabbath is really was switched to Sunday, or that you shouldn't keep Saturday Sabbath. We're not saying there's anything wrong with those things. It's just the emphasis that is put on those, that you have stories like Corey's, where Passover was withheld from you. You were told you can't keep Passover. And I believe Esperanza had a situation like that as well, as sort of a punishment. It's like and then the narrative you've been told leads you to be convinced and terrified because of you being convinced that you're going to go to hell because you're not able to keep Passover. And so it's that sort of manipulative use that the WMS how they use Passover and things like that to control, and to, again, goes back to, it's not just that they teach Passover is required for salvation. It's ultimately how that teaching ends up hurting people in real life scenarios over and over again. That's the issue we have.
Also, another important thing too is, like, they say Passover is the way to salvation, that the 66 books of the Bible center around the one truth of the Passover, right? But the thing is, with the WMS, it's not just about the Passover. Like Anthony was saying, you have to keep the Passover, you have to keep all the Sabbath day, you have to keep third day, you have to go preaching a certain amount of times a month, you have to bear a certain amount of fruit. And if at any point you mess up in one of those, you're guilty of not doing any of it. They show that verse in the Bible that says, you can do everything, but if you don't do one thing, you're guilty of not following it all when it comes to the law. And so you can keep everything, but if you don't bear fruit, meaning if you don't recruit successfully for the church, it's as good as if you didn't keep the Passover at all.
Yeah. And that's why I like to emphasize verses like this one, just because I think there's such a contrast between what the New Testament says about our approach to God and how groups like the WMS, what they say. And so, again, for by grace you've been saved through faith. Me and Edgar we walk through this verse in our video, but it's grace is something that is freely given. And he goes on to say, this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God. So a gift, by definition, is something that you cannot do something to work for. So in this scheme of things that you guys are describing, it's like, imagine this scenario. So this is the scenario, again, I used with Edgar, but I have kids. Imagine I bring home a couple Hot Wheel toys for my 4-year-old or my 9-year-old. And I come home with Hot Wheel toys and I say, look, my son, I got you a gift. I got you this gift. And I kind of hold it out like, do you want this gift? And he's like, yes, I want it. And he goes to reach for it. And I say, well, hold on a minute. If you want to, have you mowed the lawn yet? Have you done your chores? Did you do the dishes? Did you put your clothes away? Did you do your homework? Did you sweep the floor? Did you do all these things you need to do? Because once you do those things, then you can have the gift. And then he goes and does all those things. And I say, well, hold on, because you got to do it next week too, right? Like, make sure you do it next week. So I continue to hold this out. And so months and months and months go by, and I'm just making sure that he continues to do all his chores. And every day he has to do all his chores. And I'm continuing to say, if you keep doing all your chores, I'll give you this gift, this free gift of a Hot Wheel. Who in their right mind would look at that scenario and say that what I was offering was a gift? That's not a gift. No. It's a paycheck at best. It's just blatant abuse at worst, but it's not a gift. A gift is something that, by definition, if anything is done if anything is offered in exchange for it, it no longer is a gift. And so Paul says that salvation, I would say, like, entering, yes, it involves judgment, heaven, hell, and so much there that I can't get into that I'd love to, but this idea of entering into a God's kingdom here and now, God's kingdom where right now we experience righteousness, peace, and joy in our life. We experience reconciliation, knowing, okay, yes, I have messed up. I'm not what I should be all the time, but God embraces me freely. He loves me because of who he is, not because of who I am. From the get-go and from the start, he accepts us, embraces us. We are good to go. That's the way that I think the true gospel sets it up. It's like God accepts us on this timeline right here at the starting point. The WMS constantly holds it out here. And it's like this ever moving thing. It's like here's the member, here's God's love and acceptance, here's peace, here's confidence that you will in fact be in heaven. It's like it's always moving. It's always moving. This gospel, Ephesians 2:8-9, is saying, no, like, look, God's right here. He's giving it to you right at the start. It's yours. And now go on and yes, do the good works, but you're doing it out of a place of knowing what you already have, who you already are. I'm doing good works, quote unquote, because I know that I'm already accepted by God. And so I think that I would just encourage you, Romario, who asked that question again, how do I get saved? I'll challenge you to do what I challenged Edgar to do about 5 or so years ago when he was still a member. And that was to go take the book of Galatians and read it through and take off your lenses of what you've been told us about, read the entire book and ask yourself, what is Paul trying to communicate here? If I ask Paul, how do I get saved? What does Paul seem to be saying about that as a way of an answer in the book of Galatians? If I just look at it honestly, I try to understand what I actually think he intended to say. And so that would be my challenge. My challenge is just be, if you want to know the answer to that, I would encourage you to get into the Bible, get into books like Galatians or Romans and see what, if you want to know what Paul said about how to be saved, just go read Paul. And I know as a WMS member, you guys so often, you're not reading the Bible. You're taking bits and pieces here and there and you're stringing them together. And it's a whole different thing you're going to discover when you just take the Bible and read it through in its context. And so that would be my final thoughts about that question. Have you guys seen any other things you want to bring up? Any other questions that we should pull up?
I don't see anything of value from Romario anymore.
Yeah.
I see some people that have said, that they've watched the channel and have either left like fairly recently, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's true. Let me pull up.
I think I saw 2 comments on that.
So Julio said, hey guys, I just want to thank Great Light Studios so much. My wife left the WMS 2 weeks ago, and part of the reason that she left is because of y'all's videos. So that is awesome. That's why we're doing this. That's thank you for sharing that. And I hope you guys are finding freedom. I hope the videos are helping you to unpack all the thick layers of indoctrination that I know it takes time to unpack.
Yeah.
And so you said there's another one. I think
I thought I saw
Lala, is this the one? They said, I've just left 7 weeks ago after being trapped in there for 18 months, almost every day and night.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's awesome. Very glad you're out. What do you guys have any to these people who are saying they've recently left, as former members yourselves who, spent a lot of years in there and experienced the difficulty of leaving? Would you have anything you might say as a way of encouragement or advice to these people who have just recently got out?
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Well, I'm asking if you guys, do you have any advice?
I thought you were saying to those 2 comments if they had any advice.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm saying you two, Kelsey and Anthony, sorry. That I wasn't being very clear. If you guys have any advice, anything you might want to share that could help, either, I'm sure there's more than just those 2 who have kind of publicly said they've recently left. I know there's more like that will watch this video. And so anything that you might say to encourage them, because I know the initial part of that, I would say in most cases is going to be the most difficult and painful.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people, they read, and it's funny because like I think out of like 9 out of 10 people leave not because of the doctrine itself, but because of the alleged abuses of the church, right? And so I think in many respects, the church ultimately pushes people to want to leave. And in that case, like, and I know for a lot of people, they put up with those abuses, alleged abuses, for so long that that's what, they stay because they're afraid that if they leave, something will happen to them. Like the church, they adamantly say that if you leave, like, you'll get into an accident, you'll get cancer, something will happen, you'll die prematurely. So people hold on, or that they'll be like, okay, well, if I leave, where else do I go? Where else keeps the Sabbath and the Passover, right? To that, I would say, just rip off the Band-Aid and leave. Like, it will never get better in the church. It will never get better. The situation will never improve, even if you move to another Zion. It will never. It might be better for like maybe like a very short time, but it will never ultimately improve. So just rip off that Band-Aid and just leave, because life is way better outside of the world mission. It's not necessarily easy, because it is hard to unpack, so many years of, religious alleged abuse, right? But it's so much better than being a member.
Yeah. I would also say that kind of listen to your body in a way. Listen to what because for me it was different things that I had got accustomed to over the course of 10 years. For instance, every day was busy. There was never like a leisurely day in the World Mission Society. Every single day I had activity. Every single day I was surrounded by a lot of people. And then when I left, because basically over the course of the 10 years, cut out everybody that I knew, all my friends. I was moved to different places. I didn't have any like friendships. I didn't have anything outside of the church. So when I left the church, my entire social network was gone. I was isolated. I was alone. And I was so used to being around people constantly and having activities constantly that I felt uncomfortable doing something as regular as sitting at home and watching TV. Like I felt guilty. I felt like something was wrong. Like every single night I had to have some sort of activity. I had to stay up late. Like my body was used to living in this sort of like constantly working, constantly on my feet.
Stress.
Yeah, the stress. So to go from 100 to 0, was difficult. And then just kind of keeping up with like progress, like you don't have to stop and, you have to take your own time. You have to figure things out on your own. It took me a little bit of time to feel comfortable relaxing or not having constant stress or constant like requirements for me to be doing some sort of activity or being around a ton of people all the time. It was something that I had gotten used to, and still now like readjusting to regular life when you were 10 years in this particular group and lifestyle. It takes a little time to adjust. So for the one whose wife just left, just be aware that there might be certain like emotions or feelings that are going to come up, not even consciously but subconsciously. And for the one who was there for 18 months, like day in day out, and then just left 7 months ago, just give yourself time. I know 18 months versus like 10 years, hopefully things are easier for you than it was for people who left after many years, but it's never easy to go from that kind of indoctrination to reality again. So I would just say like listen to yourself, listen to what you need, and then just realize that just give yourself some forgiveness and time to readjust.
Yep.
That's my advice.
And I think so many, maybe one question, and I know there's question from Carlo I want to get to as well,
Yeah.
and a couple others that I have that aren't in the live chat, but ones that I've seen in the comments that we could maybe touch on real quick. But the biggest question we get, probably the most, at least one of it'd be in the top three, if not the top two questions we get on the channel from, I think, both current members who are coming more in an antagonistic, like disapproval of our videos. They're commenting in that way, or from former members who have just left. But the question is, where should I go? Where else would I go? If the WMS isn't true, then what other church should I go to? So there's kind of this, you see the effects, I think, of this deeply ingrained doctrine, this narrative of life. You see the negative effects of it, I think, kind of coming out in this question, because you have people feeling, I think, in some sense, those who are saying, well, where else should I go, in an antagonistic way as current members. You see them kind of trapped in the WMS. You see that's like it's almost like the jail bars. It's like their own jail bars that they're like, well, because the WMS has taught you there is nowhere else to go. Everyone else is Satan. Everything else will lead you to hell. If you leave us, you will die. Terrible things will happen to you. You will get diseases. You will go crazy. You will this and that. So that right there, that should be a red flag immediately, because that's just a textbook cult tactic, is to create this us versus them narrative of the world, where it's you're safe here within the confines of our doctrines and our teaching, our church. This is the safe place. But if you go out there, oh my goodness, are terrible, terrible, horrible things going to happen to you? And so it's just, it makes me so both furious and sad when I see people asking that question, because you see that question is being driven by that narrative, by that worldview, by that belief that still, even those who have left the church, they're still assuming the truthfulness of the WMS, whether they realize it or not, when they ask that question, because they still have this perception of there is nowhere else to go. Like, what else, what other church keeps Passover? What other church isn't controlled by Satan? I think there's so many of these sort of assumptions that go behind that question. But I have a few thoughts to answer that question, but I wanted to see how would you guys answer that? Like, what would you say? And let's not think about the antagonistic way that question is often brought. Let's think about those who are asking that in a genuine way, because I think probably more often than not, that question is asked by people who genuinely are just confused, and they're afraid. They've maybe left the church, but they're feeling like Esperanza, again, an interview that will be coming out shortly. But in her story, she left, but she left initially one time and then ended up going back. And that whole time she was out, she wanted to be in there because she wanted to go back because she was afraid of being out. She was still under that mentality, I think, as so many are, of where else can I go? And so I know there's so many people right now that are in that situation. And they just feel like they're in this terrifying limbo of, okay, I know I can't be there, but now I'm here. Now I'm in this terrible, dangerous place where my soul is at jeopardy. And if I don't figure this out, I'm toast. Mm-hmm. And so I would hope right now, maybe we could say a few things to help people, to provide some comfort, some advice, something to say, hey, look, you don't have to be driven by the fear that I think, whether you are aware of it or not, is fueling that question that you're asking. So what would you guys say in response to those genuine questioners?
Yeah, so I think, Jordan, you made a video about this a couple of years ago. You made a couple of videos, I think, on the Great Light Studios channel. I'm not sure if it's been ported over to the answering site or the answering one yet, but I mean, you don't. So that's the thing, is the WMS says, like, you if you're not gonna, where else can you, like, if you're not gonna be in the WMS, where else are you gonna go, right? Where else keeps Passover? Where else keeps Sabbath day? But the thing is you don't have to go anywhere. You can just you don't. I mean, you and you know, to be honest, in my opinion, you shouldn't go anywhere. You should take some time to heal. You should take some time to, I think one of the things that I think is really important after leaving a high demand group like the WMS, because it is identified as a destructive cult. I think it's very important to first, if you have the means, you know, seek therapy. I think find someone who you know has experience helping those with, you know, within high demand groups. If you don't have the means, there, I know the ICSA, they have group sessions that, you know, people from high demand groups can come and just talk, and those are for free. um Another thing that I think is important is to educate yourself about cults. And I know Steve Hassan is kind of like a very unfortunate name in the WMS, right? They really kind of trash his name, but he has a book called Combating Cult Mind Control, and that one's a really great. It's a short, very straight to the point book about, you know, the what happens within a cult, the difference between brainwashing and mind control, and also some tips on how to get, if you have like a loved one in a cult, how to get them out, or potentially how to get them out. So I think like seeking help, educating yourself about cults, and I think also like Caroline mentioned in the chat, you know, it takes some time to find out what you like to do, like, you know, explore new hobbies, you know. And oftentimes when people leave, they've already lost all of their friends that they had prior to the cult. So I think, you know, also trying to, you know, create relationships with people, but don't try to do all of this at once. Again, take your time, focus on your healing, and yeah, I would say, and don't worry, the last thing on your list should be, what church should I go to? Unless, you know, I mean, you can explore those, and maybe for you that is helpful, but but yeah, I would say the other things for me were far more helpful than considering that.
And that book that you just referenced by Steve Hassan, Combating Cult Mind
Cult Mind
Control,
Control.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put a link to that in the video description. So those of you who might be watching this later on, after we're done here, you can go to the description, and you can, if you want to check that book out, it'll be available there.
And also the Examining the WMSCOG also has, I believe, some book recommendations and also some documentary recommendations as well. If you, like, for example, I know Steve Hassan, his name is kind of trashed in the WMS, but he is a leading cult expert, but he's not the only one. There's other ones like, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Janja Lalick. She has a book called Taking Back Your Life. You know, Rick Allen Ross has a book about cults. I mean, there's a lot of material out there. You don't have to just look at Steve Hassan. So
there's also a book called I think it's called When Narcissism Comes to Church, by Chuck DeGroat. And that's written from more of a Christian. I don't know if he's a pastor or a therapist or psychologist, but somebody who wrote on kind of that from more of a evangelical perspective, who spoke into issues of narcissism that show up in evangelicalism in churches. So you'll see similar patterns, definitely not as severe in most cases. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is the same sort of behaviors, similarities at least, to how the WMS acts. You'll see that show up, and you can see that show up in anywhere. This is just human nature, bad human qualities that people can operate in anywhere. And so I'll also link to that one if you want something that, I think the thing that's helpful about that is he kind of helps to differentiate, I think, between what God would really look like in the scenarios, how following Christ would really look like in a leader, and how that looks like when it's deviated from. And so I'll put a link to that one as well.
Yeah, and Michelle's putting some recommendations in the chat too. She says Margaret Singer, Cults in Our Midst, and that Rick Allen Ross book that I was referencing was the Cults Inside and Out. I mean, there's many. There's another one called I think it's either called Twisted Scripture or Scripture Twisting, one of those. And maybe Michelle can correct me in the chat, but that one's also really good. Because it's written by somebody from another cult, and shows how different cults are using Scripture and twisting it, like the title says. So lots of materials out there.
Yeah, and then for me, when it comes to where to go, and usually that comes from a fear, because they have these particular things that they believe are, I cannot leave these teachings behind, even though they're doing all these bad things here. Like, I need to keep whatever it might be. I need to keep Passover. I need to keep Sabbath. But I think about those traps that they had used, like to catch the monkeys, where like they put their hand in and to grab the banana, but they can't get free because they make the fist and they won't let go of the banana, and they get like trapped there because their hand now, because of the fist, like they can't leave it. It's sort of something very similar when it comes to like the teachings of like the Passover and Sabbath. It's like when you look at the church and you look at all the different things that they've lied about, if this is the truth, if this is from God, it will be all truth, and who's the father of lies but the devil? Like, this is the teachings of the Bible. So when you start to look at their teachings, their false prophecies, things that they say would happen that did not come true, the way that they teach one thing and then make you feel like you're crazy later on by gaslighting you, and then they change what their story was, when they give false teachings about like history that are easily disputed, such as a lot of the teachings that they have in Daniel's prophecy, things that just don't add up. I think there's a really great article about Daniel's prophecy that's posted on the examining site that was taken from another site. But there's a lot of different things that you could see that this church has lied about. So even if you want to believe in the Sabbath day, even if you want to believe in the Passover, whatever, that's fine, But number one is, just because this church has some things that you really value, it doesn't mean that you should stay there, because it's making you endure all these falsehoods. So if it's truth 100%. Like they always say, like if you have water but you add a little bit of vinegar to it, you can't drink that water anymore. If you add a little bit of poison to that water, so if it's the truth that this is the true church, it would be true 100%. But when you start to see all these different falsehoods within the church, you know that this is not the place to be. So even if they have things that you value, like Sabbath or Passover, get out of that place first and then go on your path of discovery. You take everything that they said as truth and you believe it 100%, like they haven't lied to you in the past, but they've lied a lot. So, maybe you just need to take a step back and think, maybe, what they're saying about these particular requirements of salvation, maybe I need to look at that in a different way, and then just, there's nothing stopping you anymore from exploring and looking at different teachings and figuring it out. There's a lot of different resources for you, but number one is, if it's false, it's false. If it's true, it's true 100%. Just walk away. Even if you value some of the things that they've given to you, it's not worth it, because they've lied on other things. So I would say that would be my advice for anyone who's like, well, where else will I go? Well, you don't want to stick with the false church just because you're seeing a lot of other false things out there.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you're sitting there knowing you're drinking gasoline, but you've been convinced that water and anything else other than drinking gasoline is going to kill you. And so you continue to drink gasoline. You now know this is not right. I shouldn't be drinking this. Is harmful. And so, but you're saying, well, what else am I going to drink? What else is going to, what else is going to give me nourishment? Well, first, stop drinking the gasoline, and then figure that out. And I think so many members, because of the fear, they feel like, well, I'm going to continue drinking this gasoline until I figure out the next step. I have to first figure out where to go. What is the correct place? What is the true church? And then I'll stop drinking the gasoline. Well, no, stop. Just stop. don't focus on figuring out what you need to first drink. If you see somebody drinking gasoline and it's your friend, you should run and slap it out of their hands, regardless of what their beliefs are about how that's, benefiting them. So stop drinking the poison first, and then allow yourself some room to figure out, okay, what can I drink? What is actually going to benefit me? But there's no use. There's no reason to continue drinking the poison while you're, and continuing to do that while you're trying to find out what to do next.
I think it's a crutch for a lot of people, though. I think it's just they're scared to make that leap. Like Kelsey said, that they're scared to rip the Band-Aid off. So these are some of the excuses that come into mind because they don't want to take that step. I think that it's just a fear mechanism that like they don't. It's not just where do I go? It's more like what do I do? Like what will my life look like? I think that there's a few things that are attached to that is not just where do I go for my faith. I think it's also like what is my life going to look like now that my life is centered around this organization. So I think that the root of that all is fear. I think that fear is the number one reason why they even bring that question up in the first place, is because they can't imagine life outside this church that has taken away everything else and just made it the center of their universe.
Yeah. And so I'm going to just one little, I want to get a little bit theological for just a moment, because I think if you go back to Genesis, what you see is fear driving Adam and Eve. This story, whether you're taking Genesis literally or not, however you take it, it's this picture of humanity, what humanity does when they're being driven by fear and not by simple childlike trust. So you had this fear where Adam and Eve were being given this message of, oh, there's something that you need here that you don't have, and you have to do what you need to do right now in order to be good. Eat this fruit, because this will give you knowledge of good and evil. This will be what protects you. You will then be able to discern for yourself what is good and what is not. And so you need to take that step. It's like this. I think that what that tells us is this picture of how Satan was wanting them to get into like this position of self-trust, self-dependence, self-reliance, which was rooted in fear rather than in trusting God and knowing I'm fine. Like I'm not, my well-being is not dependent on what I do or do not do. It's not dependent on my own efforts and my energy and striving to take, to provide for my needs. And so Adam and Eve, in fear and unbelief, they distrusted the promise of God, the fact that God was a father who walked with them and loved them and was going to take care of them. They suddenly stopped trusting in that. And they thought, wait a minute, I have to take care of myself. I have to figure this out for myself. And so what did that lead to? Well, it led to fear and shame. They went and hid. And then what did they do? They tried to sew together fig leaves to cover their nakedness. Again, I think this serves as a picture of how, mankind, out of reliant, simple, childlike trust in God, they get into a place of fear, self-trust, and trying to provide for themselves. And so God came along and basically, he didn't need their fig leaves. He didn't need them to go out and anxiously sew together these fig leaves to try to cover themselves and provide for themselves. He came and he covered them with the skin of an animal. He provided that for them. And so I think there's just a picture there of maybe a bit of a story there that can help people, especially those who are wanting to come out and try to figure out how to maintain some kind of faith in God. I think, as Kelsey said, you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to go anywhere. And I would totally agree with Kelsey. My opinion would be you should not go anywhere. I as much flack as I might get from saying this, I don't think the best thing for you is going to be to go and find a church immediately. Now, there's no one size fits all scenario here. There's not. And you might go to a church and find immediately, as I think some have, like Chrissy Mendez, who we've interviewed. She went and joined a church, and she found a lot of healing and freedom from that, which is great. I think that's not always going to be the case. You might run in fear to a church, and it might just completely make things worse. But I think you can step out and know, wait a minute, I don't have to be, like Adam and Eve here, and anxiously go and try to cover myself, try to provide for myself. I can step out and know that the message of Scripture is one that says, don't fear. Like God says in Isaiah, do not fear. I am with you. Jesus, like I think of that story where the disciples were in the boat. They're in the boat, and the storm came, and it was, they freaked out. They were freaking out. They're saying, we are going to die. And Jesus was sleeping. It just seemed insane to the disciples. They're like, what is wrong with you? Do you not understand that we need to do something right now to keep us safe, to keep us from dying? It's our responsibility. So they're being motivated by fear. And Jesus just said very patiently, very lovingly, very gently, why are you so fearful? Why are you so afraid? And so I think, for those of you asking that question, I think that's what Jesus, that's what God would be saying to these people. That's what he would say to you. You who are so afraid and fearful, you're feeling like there's a storm, your whole life is being destroyed, and you feel like, I'm going to die, I'm going to perish. And so Jesus would just say, why are you so afraid? It's okay. I'm here. I'm with you. You can trust me. You don't have to figure all this out. That's my responsibility to provide for you. You don't provide for yourselves as children of God. The Father provides. And so I think that would be his word to you, and just saying, do not fear. I am with you. I am with you, whether you find a church or if you don't find a church, whether you're reading your Bible or you put your Bible in a box for a couple of years like Kelsey did. I'm with you. Do not fear. Do not be afraid. I will lead you. I will show you the way you should go. And so I think there's a way to leave, to not feel like you have to get all the answers immediately. You have to figure out what's the right church to go to. What do I do with Passover? What do I keep the Sabbath or not? Should I keep tithing? You don't have to figure all that out. Just rest. The Bible is a message of the gospel is a message of one that primarily says the first thing you need to do. The people in John 6 who came and asked Jesus, what is it that we need to be doing the works of God? Which is pretty similar, I think, to the way many of these people are asking this question. And what did he said? This is the work of God, that you believe. Just believe in the one he has sent. And I think that's him saying, just sit down, rest, stop thinking what you need to do. The only thing you need to do is just stop thinking that you need to do something. Right. The thing you need to do is to stop thinking that you need to do. And when you do that and you realize, wait a minute, I don't have to do anything because I'm provided for by a God who loves me. I think that's the one thing I would say, I feel confident saying that I think God would want you to do, is to stop doing and to start just sitting down, resting, and realizing that this isn't about you. It's not about you. It's not about what you do or don't do and how well you do it. It's not about you figuring it all out, because the gospel is a story about Jesus God who came and became a man like us to do everything that we couldn't do for us. And then he simply says, it's done. It is finished. Now what I'm asking you to do is to just trust that. Trust what I have done for you, that I've done all the things that you could not do and that you're so anxious about. I've come and I've provided the clothing for you, so you don't have to frantically go around sewing fig leaves together to try to cover yourself. That's not your job. That's my job. And so I would say just learn to rest. and I think that's the general consensus. I'm saying it in a more theological way, but that seems to be the same thing Kelsey and Anthony are saying as well.
Yeah, that's what Anthony said, because it's a hard thing, because you're used to just going like boom, 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 like you always having to do something. Everything has to have a purpose towards a goal. Like you never get the chance to like sit and just, like you said, think, like sit and just do nothing, right? And so that is a hard thing to transition into, but that's in that space of time. That's when you'll figure out like what you don't like, you know, you'll figure out yourself and you'll start rebuilding those
Yeah.
relationships that you had with people.
Figuring out who you are, because they stole that from you. They stole, they locked you up in a cage, and it has not been you living your life on this planet for the last however many years you've been in the WMS. They have locked you up, and you need to reacquaint yourself with yourself. You need to remember who it is that you actually are. Who are you even? People don't know. They come out of this, I don't even know who I am anymore. What do like you said, what are my passions? What are the things that were in my heart as a kid? What are the things that I feel like God made us all for a purpose, and he put stuff in us to do on this planet, things that when we connect with that, we're connecting with the deepest, truth about who we really are, and what our lives really are meant to be about. And so figuring out how to completely cut off and break away from that cult identity, and to reacquaint yourself with the identity that you were born with, who you really are. And I think how God sees you, who he made you to be. And you're not gonna be able to find that in as much as you're still operating under these constructs that the WMS has instilled in you, which again is what is fueling, with fear, is what is fueling this question in the first place. Which is why I said, just pull this up real quick. Sorry, it's covering you up, Kelsey.
Oh, it's okay.
But so this would be my final thoughts, I guess, to kind of summarize this. Before answering that question of where else should I go? What should I do? Before answering that question and trying to find the right place to go, first, focus on asking yourself why you're asking that question in the first place. Search into the assumptions and beliefs that you're holding on to that are leading you to ask that question, and the underlying fear that is driving it. Focus on changing those beliefs and correcting those beliefs, figuring out what's wrong, what's not true about these beliefs, and then healing from those, and healing from the negative effects that those beliefs are causing. Because I think before you go out and try to figure out what you need to do, where you need to go, if you do that, if you run off to somewhere else, still holding on to these beliefs, you're, in many cases at least, you're just going to continue to cause disruption and confusion and pain in your life, and set yourself up for more issues. So that's why I think we're all just saying, stop. Just what you need to do, where you need to go, is your couch, your bed. Sit down, lay down, stop. Just stop and learn to be comfortable with stopping and not doing anything. Because the WMS has convinced you that if you do that, you will die. You are in danger, and terrible things are going to happen to you. That is a lie. That is a horrible, terrible, abusive lie that has tormented you and continues to torment you. And so stop believing it. When you have that fear that says, oh, I need to be doing something, and you feel that anxiety, learn to stop and say, that is a lie. That is a lie. Whatever that message is I'm hearing right now is telling me I'm not okay, that I'm in danger because I'm not doing the right things, or I need to figure out what to do. Learn to stop and say, identify what that is. Call it out for what it is. That is a lie. That is not true. That is something that is trying to deceive me. And though it might be saying this is what is going to keep me safe, you feel like that question is actually trying to protect you, but it's not. In the same way, Satan saying, eat the fruit, because you'll be like God. You'll have the knowledge of good and evil. This is what you need to do to be safe, to be protected. It was a lie. It seemed good. It has an appearance of wisdom, but it's ultimately going to continue to destroy you and harm you. So learn to identify it for what it is, and get comfortable with not doing anything. Figure out what are the assumptions and the wrong beliefs that I'm holding on to still that are driving that question. That would be what I would encourage people to address before they then try to address, okay, what the practical question of what church do I go to? Do I need to keep Passover? And so on and so forth.
I agree.
Sweet. Have there been any other questions or things in the side chat you guys have seen?
Did we ever get to Carlos' question?
I don't know that we did. No, we did not. Here, let me pull it up.
Okay, yeah.
Is this the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so Carlos said, I have a question. What is a quick way to explain that just because the WMSCOG keeps the Passover, that doesn't make it the true church? So what do you guys think about that one?
Yeah, so I put in the chat that for me, the quickest, I mean, because you want a quick way, right? The quickest way is, where in the Bible did Jesus or the apostles say that the Passover is the way to identify the true church? I mean, they never said that. They never even said Passover is the way to salvation directly, right? So that's the quickest way. But also it's important to understand that, the WMS teaches that the Passover was abolished, right? But the thing is the Passover has been in the Bible for thousands of years, right? So it's not that like people couldn't open up and the Bible and say, oh, there's the word Passover. Churches kept the Passover, right? Even within the 20th century, the time which Ahnsahnghong lived, even during that time, even before then, the Passover was being kept, right? A lot of the members have heard of Herbert W. Armstrong. That's a cult too, but they kept the Passover. Herbert W. Armstrong introduced the Passover well before Ahnsahnghong did, and they also keep the foot washing ceremony. They also keep it once a year, right? The WMS, they decide when the Passover happens every year. They're not even open about to the members how they calculate that date. So it's like Passover is still being kept in other churches. It's not if Passover is a way to identify the true church, then the Herbert W. Armstrong Church should have been the true church because they were keeping it before Ahnsahnghong. And I'm sure there were other churches that were keeping it even before them. So yeah, that's my explanation.
Anthony? Oh, hold on. I think you're muted, Anthony.
I am. Okay. I would say that kind of going back to what I was explaining before, that, if it's the true church, it would be true 100%. But it's easy to see between like the false doomsday prophecies that they've put out there, between the ways that they lie about historical events such as 538, where they say that there was the fall of Ostrogoths, which didn't happen until 553. You go through it over and over. There's so many different things that the church lies about that will prove that it is not the true church. So like I said before, like if you feel like Passover is really important, it's not just one teaching that a church has to have that's true amongst many lies that will make it a true church. Mm-hmm. It has to have all the true teachings and be truthful about everything for it to be true. If it's like scattered with lies, it's still not the true place to be. So I would say first, separate yourself from them and then their influence and then their fear mongering, their control, their manipulation. And then look at the scriptures again, and then figure it out. Because right now, like if you're surrounding yourself with people saying, yes, this is it. Yes, this is it. When you're in the church, when you're in that like echo chamber, that's all you're going to be able to understand. Passover, Passover, Passover. Separate yourself from the situation because it's false. And then when you take some time, you can reevaluate whether or not you feel like Passover is essential or not. A lot of people look at Passover symbolically. All these things were wrapped up and fulfilled in Jesus. All the feasts, they all pointed to him. So for him to use this particular day or mention this day, that is something that, can be seen symbolically. Like we don't need to keep it on this particular day, but he created a custom on that day to be followed as the church gathers. There's many different interpretations and things like that. Just separate yourself from the World Mission Society, and then you can reevaluate how you'd like to keep the Lord's Supper.
Yeah. So if you want a quick answer or a quick way to explain, I don't know if this necessarily means a quick way to explain to myself, or like if somebody comes and asks me, what's a quick way I can explain to them that the Passover doesn't demonstrate the truthfulness of the WMSCOG, the fact that they keep it. But I would say that, I mean, there's a variety of ways that you can have a quote unquote quick answer, but I think it's going to take some a bit of work up front to be able to then, be able to hold that quick answer with you, if that makes sense. So what I mean is that, for instance, if you will just go and do what I encouraged Romario to do earlier, and just take the book of Galatians, for instance, and read through the book of Galatians and look at what it says about what it is that reconciles a person to God. What is it that Paul clearly is trying to communicate to the Galatians what they need to do to be right with God? What you'll see if you look at Galatians is that, wait a minute, this is just about faith. It's about simple trust. That alone is what reconciles me to God. And so that would be one thing, is just go acquaint yourself with the teaching of the New Testament. Become familiar with what it is that the apostles and the New Testament actually teaches about what it is that is required of people. And I think you'll see, if you examine it honestly, what historically for the last 2,000 years has been pretty well established, that there's some debates obviously between Catholicism and Protestantism, but faith is a pretty key thing. And so I would say just that would be one quick answer, is just be familiar with the teachings of Paul. And then if you're presented with that, well, the WMS keeps Passover, therefore that proves they're the true church, you can know immediately, well, that's just question begging. That's just, you can't just say that, because the New Testament says something completely different. It says if I have faith, I'm justified by faith, not by works. So another thing would just be, like Kelsey said, go read through the book of Acts and look at every sermon, of every explanation that was given by the apostles. And remember, Jesus said, go in the Great Commission, right? He said, go and preach, teach everything I have commanded you. And then what did the apostles go out and immediately start doing? Well, they start preaching everything Jesus commanded. Not once do you see them preaching Passover. So I think that would be another quick way, is just familiarize yourself with what historically, the only historical record, if you will, in the book of Acts that we have of what message the apostles actually preached. They did not mention Passover. So if you have that in your mind, you can know, well, that's a pretty quick way. Like if somebody says, hey, you need to keep Passover to be right with God, you can say, well, you're telling me something completely different than what the apostles taught. So am I going to go with what you're saying, or am I going to go with what they said? And then I think, as Anthony's has been alluded to as well, familiarize yourself, number 3, with the fact that the WMSCOG is not the only church that keeps Passover. They're just not. And they're certainly not the first church to keep Passover. It's just ridiculous and ignorant. It's ignorant, not trying to say that in a negative, pejorative, insulting way. It just is. There's ignorance going on there. If you believe that because the WMS keeps Passover, that proves they're the true church, well, even if Passover was a requirement, which it is not biblically, that doesn't say anything about the WMSCOG's validity, because there's plenty of other churches that keep Passover, and plenty of other churches like the Armstrong Church of God that kept Passover long before the WMS was talking about it. Not only that, but the other core doctrines, like the doctrine of the existence of a heavenly mother, a female deity. Was the WMSCOG the first one to come up with that? No, they were not. They sure weren't. Mormons have been teaching that for years, long before the WMSCOG. The Mormons had that doctrine that we have a heavenly mother, a mother that is in heaven. And in a lot of ways, they use very similar arguments to arrive at that conclusion. There is nothing unique about the WMSCOG. And So another quick way, again, would just be to familiarize yourself with the facts. Become familiar with the facts, with history, with familiarize yourself with what other churches, what other religious groups, and even what other cults believe. And you'll see that, wait a minute, the fact that the WMSCOG teaches this or that, it doesn't demonstrate anything about its truthfulness, because you have all these other churches that have taught the same thing before the WMS. And so it doesn't teach anything about the WMSCOG, or it doesn't prove anything, the fact that they keep Passover, other than that they're unoriginal, that they're not unique. It proves that they don't have something new and different than what other churches before them have had. They're just rehashing things that have been believed and taught in other churches.
I want to point out another kind of funny, kind of interesting comment is from Lala. Lala says, Lala's one of the ones who recently left, but I think has a son that's still there. They write, is there any way we can get a copy of Mother's divorce certificate stating that she filed for divorce? The overseer told him that she only got a divorce after her husband died. And if the overseer told her son that,
it's not really a divorce then.
Yeah. Like I'm if you look, I just Googled it because just for funsies, I Googled it and it said, do you need to file for divorce after your spouse dies? And it says there's no need. The marriage automatically legally ends with the death of either of the spouses. So like, if that's what they're being told, that's a straight up lie.
Maybe spiritually died is what.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
That'll be okay.
I mean, they were both in the church together.
Yes.
But
yeah.
But anyways, regardless, if she filed, like if they're claiming anything about the divorce, they're not denying the divorce happened, clearly, right? And even when I was still in the church, they never denied that once the information about her divorce came out, they never denied the divorce happened. They would say stuff like, "Oh, he divorced her," right? So if they are making any claims as to when the divorce happened, hey, provide the certificate. So.
Yep. I mean, it's funny though. When the information was released that she had a divorce, that she had kids, he had kids, he had a wife, he was married. Everyone said too, that when the information was slowly coming out, the story changed like a mile a minute, because it was originally, oh yeah, well he left his wife too, and then he was married to Zhang Gil Jah. That the story just kept on changing. Everything I was hearing just kept on changing and changing. Anyway, the story about her and the divorce and him and the divorce, it's just the story, they just couldn't get it right until all the information was out there.
Yeah. So Lala bring up Malachi 2:16. God hates divorce. She did what she hates. They ask. And so that's what I thought of too. And I thought, you can immediately present this as like a basic philosophical argument. I'm not a philosopher, but I took a community college course, so I'm well equipped to make a philosophical argument. But it'd be as simple as like, A, God, the true God, hates divorce. Therefore, God would not get a divorce. B, Zhang Gil Jah, who claims to be Mother God, got a divorce. C, therefore, Zhang Gil Jah is not God. This is just pretty basic. And so, it's just there's so many glaring, blatant ways you can demonstrate over and over again that WMS is just false, for lack of better terms. It's unfortunate that it's so hard for any one of these, even as simple as that simple evidence that she got a divorce, and you have scripture saying that God hates divorce. It's something that he hates. And so I think it's safe to presume that that's something he would never engage in. But yet, Zhang Gil Jah did. And so, problematic. Okay, so unless you guys have another question in the side chat or comment you want to look at, there's one. Say that again, Kelsey.
I don't think I'm seeing anything. I mean, one person asked, like, where can they get the books from the church, but the church doesn't sell the books publicly. I mean, you might be able to find a random one on eBay or Amazon, but it's going to be very few and far
I think a lot of what does the New Covenant Passover website still have a lot of those Ahnsahnghong books? Like
They
you wouldn't
do.
be able to get the Juchul Kim ones, but you could probably find some. I remember seeing somewhere like it took a lot of like digging, but they have a lot of his books on websites. But maybe
yeah, they do, but those aren't necessarily the WMS versions. But yeah, those are definitely available. That site is the ncpcog.com or .co.kr. That one. And you can if you navigate far enough, you can find the text version to where you can copy and paste it into like a translator, so you can see what the English would be. I think they have like maybe 2 English versions of any of his books, but that's about it.
And just while we're on the topic of books, just to say again, if you have books, if you're a former member, if you've just left the church and you have books and you're planning to just throw them away or toss them, you don't want them, whatever. If you would like to get rid of them, would you reach out to us? We would love to get those from you. If you are willing to send them over, we will even pay for. I will pay for the shipping costs, which they're books, and so you can ship them media mail, so it's not gonna cost much either way. But if you have books and are willing to send them to us, it'd be great if you would get a hold of us, and you can contact us at Anthony, what's the email that we've got set up?
it's a long one, but it is WMSCOG answers at greatlightstudios.com.
Yeah.
So
and that
answers.
Yeah. And that email it's in the video description too. So you can find it there. Okay. So real quick, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but this is just a comment that we got 4 days ago. So it looks like from a member.
Okay. I see. Well, I gotta give a shout out to Esther in the chat because I know Esther. Esther, I'll contact you. I want what you got.
Cool. Awesome. So this person says, I think they meant to say give instead of gave. Give me another verse, the saints or the church that gives the living water in the book of Revelation 22:17. If your point is correct, may I know? We believe too that in the Bible, the bride is saints or church, but in the book of Revelation, we are not the bride because the bride is represented as our heavenly Jerusalem. One word in the Bible is not only one meaning. So I would just say really quickly to that, Revelation 22:17, I believe that's the one that says, come to the waters. So there's an invitation by this entity that is the New Jerusalem, the bride, that is saying, come to the waters. So here's just a very quick way to show that this verse is being immediately misread, eisegeted. So nothing in Revelation 22:17 indicates that the bride is the one who is in possession of the water of life. The bride isn't saying, come to me for living water. The bride isn't inviting the lost world to herself. The bride is simply saying, come to the waters. And so there's nothing in that book that suggests that the bride is the one who has the power to give or withhold the living water. Nothing in Revelation says the bride is the one who has the living water. The bride is simply inviting people to come to the living water, which is Jesus, which elsewhere in Revelation, it describes, I don't have we could pull up the verse if I knew what it was, But I know elsewhere in Revelation, it talks about how Jesus is the one who gives living water. And there's nothing odd about that. It makes perfect sense. If the church is the bride, if the people of God are the ones who are being represented by this figure of the bride, makes perfect sense that they would be the ones saying, come to the waters. They're, like we just mentioned a few moments ago, Jesus said, go and preach everything I've commanded you. Go out into the world and give this message of the gospel and invite people to come. And so the bride, the people of God, that's one of the things they're going to be doing is proclaiming, come to the waters, come to the one who can give you life. And so, yeah, nothing here suggests that the bride is a second deity, a female deity. Nothing suggests that the bride is the one who has the power to give or withhold the water of life. The bride is simply one who is proclaiming to the world to come to the waters. And we know from elsewhere, both in Revelation and other places in the New Testament, in John specifically as well, the Gospel of John, where Jesus says, I am the living water. So you guys have any further thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty clear that, it says, like you said, the Spirit and the bride are saying come, and then let him who hears say come, right? So there's three sets of people that are saying come. There's the Spirit, the bride, and those who are here. Let him who hears, those who are hearing are also saying come. Just saying come does not mean you are giving it in that moment, right? And I know that they'll reference John chapter 7, verse 37, I think, where Jesus says, come to him and they can receive the water of life. But the difference in that statement is that Jesus says, come to him and you can receive, right? The water
come
of
to
life.
me.
Yeah, come to me,
Yeah.
right? Here it says the Spirit and the bride are saying come, and then those who are hearing are saying come. So if by saying come, the Spirit and the bride, they are God, then those who are hearing are also God by that logic, because they're also doing the exact same thing. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things about this verse too is I believe Kelsey had spoke about it in another video about how this New Jerusalem won't appear until after the 1,000 years. And their response to that is that, oh, well, then who will be offered this water then? If the world, if it's already been 1,000 years, the world's already gone through all that, the trials, who's going to be offered the water? Thirsty angels? That's the, I believe the Victor, snide remark about it. But if you look at the book of Revelation, chapter 22, the whole Revelation concludes with verse 11. After that, it's called the epilogue, and although that was added later, that's basically, now that this revelation is done, now it's sort of a summation of what the book was about, kind of like final remarks. Like the epilogue, like we have like the official dictionary version of what an epilogue is. So
let me see.
An epilogue is a concluding section that rounds out the design of a literary work. So it's basically, now that the story is over, we're going to do a summation. And the epilogue here is about the invitation. And like Kelsey was explaining, with this is the Spirit and the bride, they say come, but like, we've all been saying, they're not actually offering it. And those who hear, what are they doing? They're also saying come. So what is the difference between the people who have heard and now they're proclaiming, and then the Spirit and the bride? All this group of people, the Spirit and the bride, they're all just doing the same thing. They're all just saying come, come, come. To whom? To what? To the water of life. Just because they're offering it does not mean that they're the source of it. Right in the beginning of the chapter, chapter 22, it says, then the Lord showed me a river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. So right there, Revelation chapter 22, verse 1 shows where's the water coming from? It's coming from God the Father and Jesus. They're the ones who are giving this water of life. So the Spirit and the bride, the church and the Holy Spirit, they're just leading us to God, to Jesus, to receive the water of life. They are not the ones who are the source of it or giving it. So the spin, they want you to look at Revelation the way that they describe it to you. They want you to believe that this is like there's no sort of chronological order of the events of Revelation, that everything is like movable and it will apply where we say it applies. It's really hard for them to describe the book of Revelation actually in detail. They just take bits and pieces of it and then ignore the rest of it. That's been my experience in the World Mission Society. But you can see that final statement is just them rounding out, what the book of Revelation is about, that the church and the Holy Spirit are guiding us to God so that we can receive eternal life from God.
Yep. So if you didn't catch that, that's incredibly significant, that fact that it's the Spirit, the bride, and the one who hears. They're all saying the same thing. They're all giving the same invitation. So if you want to argue that the fact that the bride is saying come, that proves that the bride is God and is the one in possession of the water of life who has the power to give it, then you have to also say the one who hears also is God. And so now we have a third God. Maybe this is Uncle God, or maybe this is nephew God. Who knows? It's not. This is the bride represents the church. That's the consistent theme all throughout the Old Testament, from the Old to the New. The Old Testament always gives this analogy, this picture of God marrying his people, becoming united to his people in this intimate way, his people, Israel, true Israel. And so that is what you are seeing. Of course, John, as a Jew familiar with the Torah, the Old Testament, the prophets, he is going to be drawing from these analogies, these pictures from the Old Testament, and that is what he's doing here. This certainly does not teach that there is a mother God. That's a very strange WMSCOG teaching that didn't originate with them. Again, Mormons believe that too. I don't know if I don't think they would use this verse to teach that. I think they would probably be.
No, they don't. They say that the female God is so holy that she's not mentioned. But even there was a movement back in the 12th century where they believed in a female God as well. It's called Catharism. It's a group, like a cult group that was in France. So there's been a few different like renditions of this God the Mother thing, but yeah, Mormon is actually, I heard about that before when I was in the church. And just like what I heard about Mormonism, they told us, oh, be careful when you preach to Mormons because they'll steal our doctrine and make it their own. They'll add, to their teachings. Once they discover, the truth of Mother, they've already stolen it, but they don't understand it yet. But they've been preaching this well before World Mission Society. Like the way that they described it to me was completely false. But it made me believe that they stole it from that group. They stole it from the World Mission Society. But in reality,
because they lie.
But in reality, it was kind of vice versa.
Yeah. So this one, I'm very interested. Angel Lugo says, I'm very interested in the David and Melchizedek thing. They kind of or almost convinced me on those things. So I would say if you are interested in diving deeper into that, we have quite a few videos on this topic. Edgar dived into this. I think he did. Yeah, he did like a 20.
I found the Melchizedek one, but I couldn't find the David one.
I might need to repost that. I need to put that up on this channel, Answering the WMS. I think I did the Melchizedek one, but I haven't done the David one. But maybe real quick, I think that the David one is, in my mind, it's David's throne. I'm assuming is the one being referenced here, which to me is
Yeah.
a pretty easy one to quickly dismiss.
Well, for me, for this one, it's like, even if the David prophecy is as the Bible says, even if it were like that, then where is the proof that Ahnsahnghong was baptized in 1948? Because the church will say, like, oh, the proof is he wrote in his Bible he was baptized on Noxum Island in 1948. But there's no proof that's his Bible. That's no proof that's his handwriting. That's not a baptism certificate. They'll say, I mean, they'll use that as like proof. But again, I've never seen any proof of him being baptized in 1948. I've seen some alleged proof of him being baptized in 1954, but not 1948. And so, and when you ask them questions like, okay, what church was he baptized into? Right? They'll say Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they'll say, no, what's the name of the church? They have no answer. And then when I remember when I had left and I had met with someone, and she's like, give me all your questions, I'll give you all the answers. And I said, well, where's the certificate? And she told me it was destroyed in a fire. And then I come to find out a few years later that the church is now saying, oh, they do have a certificate. So it's like, well, why did you lie to me and tell me that it was destroyed in a fire? Because then I asked, like, okay, when did the fire happen? Where did the fire, I mean, what was the name of the church where the fire, or not the church, but where was the name of the establishment that was holding the record that the fire happened? Like, these kind of details they couldn't answer. So even if the prophecy is exactly as they say it in the WMS, I still see no proof that Ahnsahnghong is the one who fulfilled it.
Yeah. So that immediately is an issue. Anthony?
Well, they also make a point, like I said before, that like, how can you trust the Bible? And they always say, well, don't you think God could protect the book? So something as significant as the proof that, this is Christ, this piece of paper, this document, if God can, protect the book through, ages and generations, then what about just for a couple of years protecting a piece of paper with his baptism record or the building that, that held it? And like Elsie said, there's what fire, what church,
what year did it happen? So I can look it up for a news article.
There's an ex-member who I knew back when I was in Queens, and I was having a chat with him, and I was like, hey, you remember about because I just wanted to bring up that there's this other document that says 1954, but I'm like, do you remember about the baptism record? And he's like, yeah, they said it was lost in a fire. And I was like, what? Because I hadn't heard about that. I never asked about that, but he was there for a bit before me, so that's what he had heard. He also had heard that it was lost in a fire. And this is someone from New York, and Kelsey was out on the West Coast, and this is East Coast, and they still had the same story about what happened to the baptism record. But the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they have baptism records back from the 1800s. Like, they keep all of it. Like, they do a really good job with the recording and things like that. Like, I've reached out to the Seventh-day Adventist Church about this very topic, and I was asking about their record keeping because I thought it was strange that they found a baptism record from 1954. So I'm like, is this legit? Do they really keep it? But they do. And not only that, you'd think that they would have a record of the fire or the person who he said baptized him and the location, all the things that are in that alleged handwritten note. But I'm not even sure if you remember, Kelsey, but there was a video that they had released where they said, and Father's handwriting was so unique, not a single person in the whole world could copy it. That's a strange comment to make. It's almost like you're letting us know what happened. But besides that, I would say that there should be some sort of records, but there are none. But there is a really good explanation about the King David throne that Edgar had done. Basically, they just made up a prophecy to make up a prophecy. And Ahnsahnghong wasn't the one who created this prophecy either. That was published inside of that religious magazine that they quote. Actually, Suim wrote about it in her book before Ahnsahnghong ever did. So, and she stayed in the church after that. So I would just say that, this is a made up prophecy, but it also, when you look at these things, the Moonies, they have a lot of teachings very similar to this, that they use the exact same methodology to prove that their false prophet was the Christ. So, the same thing with SCJ. They use very similar sort of methods as King David prophecy, Melchizedek prophecy, to prove that their false prophet is the second coming. So, you could just kind of look through. It's very common, these sorts of things, and a lot of people do get fooled by these teachings. But yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah. So let's just very quickly, the David's throne prophecy can be just so quickly and entirely refuted. So Isaiah 9, of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness for 40 years. Oh, wait, that's not there. It actually says he will reign on David's throne from that time on and forever. Okay, that's interesting. Psalm 89.
Not for 3 years and then do 37 a couple thousand years later. Like
Yeah. Psalm 89:36. His line will continue forever, and his throne will endure before me for 40 years. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, that's not there. It actually says his throne will endure before me like the sun. And then let's see that what it goes on to say. It will be established forever like the moon, the faithful witness in the sky. Is the duration of the sun and the moon's existence in the sky 40 years? I hope not, because we wouldn't be here. He says forever. This throne will be established forever. Luke 1:33, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. His kingdom, his reign will not last for 40 years. It will endure forever. The other thing is, Jesus starting his earthly ministry wasn't him establishing his reign. That wasn't him, his inauguration of his reigning as king. Hebrews 1:3 talks about how it says the Son is the radiance of God's glory, the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. And he had provided, after he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty in heaven. Jesus sat down on his throne, and his reign began after he had provided purification for sins. So Jesus' reign began when he ascended and he sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high, and it will not last for 40 years, but it will endure forever. His kingdom and his reign will never end. There is nothing, not a single verse in the Bible that even slightly indicates that the reign of the Messiah would be 40 years, that David's reign was somehow, the duration of David's reign was somehow a parallel or an exact representation of the length of the Messiah's reign. That's something they just pull out of thin air. Okay. And you could do that with anything, and just make up a false prophecy. So the David's throne prophecy is not a prophecy at all to begin with. But like Kelsey said, even if it was, which it is clearly not, even if it was, there's still no proof that Ahnsahnghong fulfilled it. Not even close.
mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we are at the 3-hour mark. So maybe we can begin to wrap this up. Is there anything else you guys?
Jordan, that's early for us.
I know. Hey, I'll go for 8 hours, but I want to respect everybody else's time. Probably not 8 hours. I don't think I'd last that long. Is there anything else? Any other comments you guys saw? Any other things you wanted to mention?
I don't think so.
People enjoyed the Uncle God comment. Yep.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, it's funny, but I think there's actually some legitimacy to that argument. If you follow their rationale for one of their main arguments to prove that there is a female deity, well, we should have an uncle and an aunt and a cousin god and all the rest. Well, I guess one thing I actually forgot to mention about this comment here, maybe this is what we can get into to kind of close this out. So they asked about the David and Melchizedek thing, and I'm finding that so many people are asking us to cover topics that we've already covered like multiple times. And so this is one of the reasons why I really would love to get a website up. I know there's already websites out there. I know like Michelle Clone's Examining the WMSCOG is a very helpful website. But just to point out, this is one reason why I think I would love to get a website where all these videos, all these materials were created are like, we can start to create like a full extensive like library where people can go to the website. If they want to know about David's throne, they can click this. Here's like search by category. They can click on categories and see Ahnsahnghong prophecies, Mother God, or even search by scripture. If somebody's like, well, what do I do with this Bible verse? Doesn't this prove the WMS? And they can click on that verse and find all the things that we have made about that specific topic will pop up. It just YouTube, all the things that we've covered, like I said, David and Melchizedek, but with YouTube, they tend to just get kind of shuffled down the line and you don't really see them anymore. So all that to say, I need help. I would love to get a website up, but I can't. The website platform I'm looking at would actually allow me to have a website and an app, which I think would be helpful. The person I talked to said people who get the app, they see a huge boost in numbers of the people who find the website and watch the videos. So I just think it'd be a hugely effective way to get all these materials out to more people. But the monthly fees of a website, I actually shut down the Great Light Studios website because I couldn't afford to keep paying the monthly bills for all that. So I don't like asking for money, but all this does cost money. Not only the time it takes to make these videos, and Kelsey and Anthony take tons of time out of their days to do this, and there's the costs of music licensing and editing software and streaming software and the website that I'd love to get up. And so if you have any desire at all to support this ministry, if you can do it pretty easily just by going to patreon.com/greatlightstudios and become a monthly supporter. There's supposed to be perks there, like you're supposed to get early access to videos, and I do a terrible job. So I'm going to publicly apologize because I do a terrible job at keeping up with those or giving much extra stuff to those who are supporting. I'd like to get to where I can do that eventually a little bit more. But if you want to support Great Light Studios, there is definitely a need, and I would appreciate that. So, okay, well, let's do this. The last thing I want to do, again, another thing that I don't often do because I don't know how to ask this question without feeling a bit self-promoting, but I'm in the process of trying to raise more financial support, and I want to create like a shorter video that kind of summarizes like the harm the WMS causes to people and why it's a problem, because so many people just don't get it. People who know me don't understand really why I'm doing what I'm doing. It probably seems a bit strange, probably seems a bit pointless. This guy is just obsessed with this Mother God thing. What is he doing? Because people, I think, don't understand that this is actually hurting people. Like in real life, this is harming people. And so I just wanted to ask Anthony and Kelsey, and this is something I would extend to anybody watching. If Great Light Studios has like impacted you in some way, if it's helped you, if you see what's being done on these platforms and you see the value in it, if you I don't know the best way to do this, but you could just as simple as record an audio message that talks quickly about, hey, this is such and such. If you want to give your name, you can, but you don't have to. Record an audio message on your phone or a quick video of yourself just saying, this is how the WMS harmed me. This is how it impacted me negatively. And this is how Great Light Studios has helped me. This is how it's impacted me. This is how it's helped me to get free. If you have any willingness or interest, that would be hugely helpful to me. If you would record a video or audio and email that to either contact@greatlightstudios.com, email that to the WMSCOG answers at gmail.com. Great Light Studios. Okay. Anyways, those emails are in the description. But if you've been impacted positively, that would be a huge help. It helps not just because I want to take those and put them in some kind of video where I can show people and say, hey, look, this is why I'm doing this. But it's helpful to me too. It really, when I see comments, like some of the comments I've seen earlier in here, I'm sure it is for Kelsey and Anthony as well. Just a huge boost of encouragement to keep doing this. When people are saying, hey, I've been in the WMS for such and such years, and your videos have helped me, or it was your videos that helped my wife ultimately get out, things like that. It's very encouraging for us to realize and remember, okay, this is really helping people. But I think other people who I think have the resources, the finances to support what we're doing, I think they need to be able to understand why this is important as well. And so all that to say, if you are willing, anybody listening to this, anybody watching, former members or not, if you've been helped by this channel answering the WMSCOG or Great Light Studios, and if you were willing to just record a short audio message, I'd prefer video. Video would be better, but I understand if you don't want to do that. And again, you don't have to put your name in there, but if you want to talk about, whatever information you want to give, just a short, how the WMSCOG caused you harm, how it hurt you, confused you, whatever, and then how Great Light Studios might have played some role in helping you. And if you could email that to us, that would be, a huge help to me. And so I just quickly want to ask, and I'll just start with you, Anthony. Again, this doesn't have to be long. You can do a minute, 2 minutes. If you could just share quickly, like summarize how the WMSCOG hurt you, like how it kind of, sent to you into, I know it's hard. How do you summarize that? But just if you wanted to summarize to somebody in a quick snippet, why this group is bad and why ministries like this and examining the WMSCOG and all the rest are helpful.
Well, I would say that there's so many different levels that I was affected by my time in the World Mission Society. Is one, it took away many years I had with my family. I really couldn't spend free time with them. It changed me as a person where I was very critical and judgmental of everybody around me. And they literally moved me from location to location. I lost my friends. I had no communication or very little communication with my family. And those are years I'm never going to get back. That's a lot of time that I should have spent with family, that a lot of them not even here anymore. They robbed me of those like last days, they robbed me of those memories and those sort of things that are really important in life. They pressured me and put me into a marriage, which, being with somebody that you're not choosing on your own, it's kind of a violation in a lot of different ways. And, to have to go through that sort of separation, to go through like the constant labor that they put me through, the constant fear, the stress, what it did to my body. They didn't let me I had to eat what they gave me. I had to forego, exercise, in order to sit inside all day on a Saturday to study. I couldn't live my life. They took a decade, and they just filled me with constant fear. It was a really difficult time, and leaving, it leaves you without anything. You walk away with everything that you had before gone. Maybe people will welcome you back. These severed relationships don't just spark right back up like they did before. It was very lonely, very full of fear, very uncomfortable walking away from this, which is something that actually kept me stuck longer than I would have wanted to have been stuck. But I would say through the Great Light Studios channel, one, it helped me open up to a new community of people. Jordan, you actually connected me with Kelsey, and the first time I decided not to go to a service, Kelsey's the one like I got on the phone with, and I spoke to her, and I talked to her a couple of times, and she volunteered her time. But she opened me up to a community of people as well to talk to, and people who went through the same sort of experiences may help me feel much more comfortable. And through your channel, I watched a lot of the videos when I was coming out, when I was, kind of realizing what this organization really was. I did leave with a lot of doctrinal things that I knew were wrong, but watching your channel was a big comfort. I spent hours listening to it, and it just made me feel much more comfortable with my decision. It gave me the kind of the strength not to run back to them. Like I've tried to, depart from them before, but I just couldn't find the strength from all my fear that I had. But, the Great Light Studios channel really, like, one, it made me think a lot more differently about a lot of their teachings, let me view it from different perspectives that I wasn't exposed to before. And just gave me a lot of comfort when I left that I made the right choice. And, not just what videos were posted, but also just you as a resource, Jordan. That was extremely helpful. And I'm very thankful that this exists, even though the World Mission Society is doing every petty little thing that they can to make sure that it doesn't continue. I'm just thankful that, you keep making these videos, even though like you said, it maybe some people might criticize why you're focusing on it, but it helps people. I could build my life back up, after losing it for 10 years, I could start to build it back up. And I would have been stuck maybe even longer if it wasn't for this channel. So
Thank you. That's awesome. What do you think, Kelsey?
Well, so for those that are listening and considering partnering with Great Light Studios financially to help out, I know that for people who haven't been in a cult, it's a really hard thing to grasp, in their minds, that it's like, how can people fall for this? How can people think that, how could they ever think that a Korean man and woman are God, right? But it's a lot easier than you think, actually. I mean, because as someone who is in it, and as someone who recruited, it's a lot easier to convince someone that a Korean woman is God than you really think it is. And so I think, for those that don't understand, I'm really happy that you don't I'm really happy that you're in the position that you don't have to understand what it's like to be in a cult or a high demand group. But for those of us who have been in it, like you see me and Anthony talking here, but it's not just me and Anthony's whose lives have been impacted by this group. It's our family and our friends who have also been impacted, that we were in this group. So for every one person you see, there's at least 10, 15 other people whose lives have been impacted. And for a channel like Great Light Studios to exist, this is really impactful, because when I left the church, there were just a handful of videos from former members on YouTube about the WMS. And when Great Light Studios came on, was around the same time that I had left. And when I had left, I left because of how the church treated me. But what helped me solidify my decision in leaving was listening to Great Light Studios and kind of having an on-air deconstruction with you, Jordan, breaking down the doctrine, and understanding from a biblical perspective why the doctrine didn't make sense. That was really impactful for me. So for a channel like Great Lake, because and I know my story is not unique. I know a lot of other people, they're interested in understanding, like they've left, and they left perhaps even many years ago, but they also still want to understand why the doctrine is incorrect. So for a channel like this to exist, and this channel that doesn't necessarily push one belief system or another, just allows people to come on, tell their stories, and breaks down the doctrine is for me, it was very helpful. But another important thing that I want to point out with cults in general, because when you see like documentaries about cults, like on Netflix or Hulu, like you're seeing documentaries about cults where like the worst things have happened, right? Like when you think about like Jonestown, like almost 1,000 people dying, Heaven's Gate, another big mass suicide, Waco, right? When you see all these things, like people will do stories about them because something devastating has happened. But what Great Light Studios does is it's proactive versus reactive. So you're educating people about the WMS, about SCJ, and I'm sure about other cults in the future. And you're at the beginning rather than at the end. So you're in my mind, this channel is part of the solution, and not just reporting on what's gonna bring things in. So or what's gonna bring money in, and what's gonna bring attention to whoever's reporting. Like this is all about education, and your channel, I know, has affected hundreds of lives, and people have gotten, like Anthony said, people have gotten their lives back. I've gotten my life back. I also lost 10 years in this church, but now, because of Great Light Studios and because of other platforms like examining the WMSCOG, like I'm very, very confident in my decision that I made the right decision to leave. And one more thing that I want to point out about cults is cults, like what cults, they make strong efforts to enter into like government agencies, into politics, to insert themselves to promote their agenda. I mean, if you look at the Unification Church, which is the Sun Myung Moon Church, I mean, you have Trump and you have Pence giving speeches at their events. And when you see the WMS, you have journalists that are reporting on their We Love You events, even though that's a organization that if you do a Google search, it's clearly tied to this. You tied to the WMS, which has been reported even in People magazine that it's a cult. And so even though your life might not be right now in this moment impacted by cults, if they keep pushing their agendas, one day it might be. And also one day, like, if you have kids that are going to college, one day your kid might get approached by somebody from the World Mission Society Church of God or any other cult, because there's tons of cults recruiting on college campuses. Even though today your life might not be directly impacted, one day it might be. And then for that one day it might be, channels like Great Light Studios will help you navigate that situation. So I think it's a very, for those who are considering partnering with Great Light Studios, I really hope that you take that into consideration, that this channel has helped hundreds of people get their lives back from groups like the World Mission Society Church of God, from Calvinism, from SCJ. So yeah.
Thank you guys. And I want to say, not just out of a false humility, but this is just genuine. Like you guys, obviously Kelsey and Anthony, but every other member who's been willing to come on here and share their story has done as much or more in helping all these people. I know that's the case, because I think so. I just want to just say that to say it's definitely not just me doing this. I know everybody's aware of that. You guys are in, one of you is in almost, either you two or Edgar or even Michelle is in one of the videos every time I'm doing it. And so you guys are doing a ton, and you guys are helping people as well. And I couldn't I couldn't do any of this without you guys. There's still so much about the doctrine and all that stuff that I'm pretty ignorant of, and you guys lived it for 10 years. And so you know it, and you can bring that to the table. Just adds a whole other layer of, I think, legitimacy, and makes everything that happens on this channel just that much more compelling. If it had just been me these last 5 or 6 years talking and saying stuff, that would be one thing. I'm sure it would still help people. But the fact that former members have been willing to come on and be honest, open up, put themselves out there the way they have, that has been hugely impactful for so many people. So thank you guys and all the other former members as well. All right. Well, that's a good way to end this, I suppose. And so yeah, again, if you have any interest, if you're listening to this, if you've also been impacted by Great Light Studios, if you see the importance of it and you want to share that, you can just record yourself. Again, preferably video. If you want to set your phone up and record a 2-minute, it can be 1 minute, it can be 30 seconds. Or 5 minutes, just whatever you want to share about how it's impacted you, how it's helped you. That would be great. And then you can just email that to, again, just go to the video description, and there should be the different emails you can send it to. And I would very much appreciate that. That's just one huge way that you can help us to keep doing this. Let's pull this one up. Aubrey says, this channel needs to exist. It has helped me so much. Been fighting for 10 years to get my husband out. Thank you, Jordan, Anthony, and Kelsey. And that's the other thing about this, is just all the different dynamics that I think we're trying to approach on the channel. That it's not necessarily just trying to get people out, but it's helping provide support for people like Aubrey, who isn't in the church herself, but she's got a loved one, her husband, who is in. And for 10 years, I can't imagine that, Aubrey. And I'm sorry, I can't imagine how difficult and discouraging that probably is. But it's just kind of trying to help people on all these fronts. People providing support, advice, wisdom, community for people like Aubrey, who have family in there, and just nobody. I'm guessing likely most people around her in her life can't fully relate, as well as those who she can come to this channel and find other people, other husbands or wives or parents with those with loved ones who are also in, and find community, find support, find help for how to kind of navigate that, just encouragement to just keep going under. I can't imagine the stress and the pain and all that causes, having somebody, really, whether it sounds dramatic or not, somebody who's locked up psychologically and spiritually and emotionally, literally a husband chained behind a wall, and he doesn't even realize it. He because of the indoctrination and how these cults manipulate, it's keeping people where their family, their loved ones, are locked in a prison and can't get out, can't even want to get out because of the way these groups instill this fear. It's horrible. And so, that's just we're trying to help not only people get out, but help provide support for those who have family in there, providing support for people who have come out and are just looking for community, looking for videos that can help deconstruct the doctrine and all that. So thank you so much to everybody who is supporting. There's, every week or couple weeks, I've been getting a new supporter, it seems like, which is just super helpful. And so I appreciate everybody who's already supporting. And so if you haven't subscribed to this channel, would you please do that? Don't forget to subscribe to Answering the WMS if you're maybe coming over here from Great Light Studios. I do want to continue to post videos like this that are exclusive, more videos that are exclusive here that you won't get over on Great Light Studio. So make sure to subscribe. So with that, Kelsey, Anthony, thank you both so much for doing this. We're like Kelsey, like you said, we're kind of cutting it short a little bit.
Only 3.5 hours, man.
Yeah, I know. This is child's play.
I know.
But yeah, yep. We'll be back soon. I would like to start doing these live videos regularly, at least one a month. So hopefully we can do another one soon. But all right. Well, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.